dear travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin lore podcast. Last week, we journeyed to Inazuma, where we talked about Guji Yaemiko and all of the crazy stunts she likes to pull in Inazuma, the Narukami Shrine, the Yae Publishing House, and anywhere she can get her paws on. This week, we're going to be talking all about the false Archon, Furina.
Are you in love with Furina? Are you foaming at the mouth in excitement because we're finally doing our fucking episode on Furina? Would you like to see some visuals about this episode? If you would, you can go to our website, it's talesofteyvat.com, where every episode has a page curated by our lovely co-host Tiff. And you can look at visuals for many of the references that we'll be making throughout this episode.
While you're on our site, check out our past episodes and seasons, artist spotlights from the community for every topic, and some other goodies.
Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you think of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see in the future. Just remember that if you give us any negative mail, Albedo will be vetting it first. So make sure that whatever you're writing to us, you're okay with Albedo seeing. That chalk boy.
He's going to blow some chalk right in your face.
He's going to take his erasers and go, oh.
Oh my God. Poor Albedo. He's doing the dirty work for us. The Archon's work, despite the fact that he's just chalk. Anyway, this week we're going to be talking about Furina. So let's get into it.
Oh no. Sorry, Kirara.
Oh God, Kirara, are you Melty? Is that you?
What in the hell is going on in here?
Thank
up in
God,
this bar on this day.
Sorry. I tried to get in through the front door, but like they told me it was locked for recordings, so the window was the only one open. Sorry about that, Kirara.
Oh, she looks pissed. You guys, she looks really mad.
I know, we might not get mail tonight, guys, or for the next 3 weeks. But Melty, what? Why didn't you knock? Why didn't you send a pigeon carrier to tell us you're on your way? What's going on?
Well, here's how it went down. So I was with my friends, Emerald and Ran. We're currently in Natlan, stationed at I think the Collective of Plenty. That's where we're currently doing episodes on the newest stuff that's coming out. And I just sometimes I have these spider senses, like Spider-Man about certain things. And I had a feeling that at some point the topic of Furina was going to be talked about here. And it hit me, they're going to talk about it. So I got up, I packed my things, and I just had to get on the road. I didn't tell Emerald or Ran. I had to send scrolls to them the next day. So, they send their regards. Emerald's doing well. She's in the volcano with her Saurian companion doing research. And Ran is currently sick.
Oh, no.
He tried to be a part of Veresa's eating competition. And, Veresa has her own type of portion called the Veresa portion. And Ran got all high and mighty and thought he could eat that. And he didn't. So he ain't doing well. But they say hi. Of course, getting from Natlan to Mondstadt was not easy.
Of course, yeah.
I had to first get out of Natlan, which was hard by itself. I had to get through the desert. Yeah, that wasn't fun. I made it to the city and stopped for a night, and then I tried to get on a caravan that was going to go and rent a ship to Liyue Harbor because I didn't want to get through the chasm because I didn't want to fall in because if I fell in there, there's no coming out of there.
Yeah, that's not a good time.
So I got on that ship. We were supposed to go to Liyue Harbor, but unfortunately we got shipwrecked onto Watatsumi Island.
Oh no.
That's way out of the way.
Yeah, that was earlier this morning, by the way.
Did you at least grab some Sango pearls?
I didn't have any time, unfortunately.
Aw, man.
Damn it.
I could have paid for the next 3 weeks of wine. Just saying.
Sorry, you're on your own for that one. But anyways, I made it back to Liyue Harbor, fortunately enough. And I just had to find the fastest way to get to the city. The path has already been paved, basically. So I just ran as fast as I could.
Oh my God.
I made it to the winery an hour ago, and D-Luke was there, and he told me that Mondstadt City is where you guys are usually recording. So that leads to here, where I tried knocking on the door, but they told me to go away because y'all are recording upstairs.
Yeah, six-figure Jose doesn't really let anybody come in. He's our bouncer.
I learned that the hard way.
He said no one's allowed in until he can come in, and I'm not letting him in.
Yeah, I was trying to find a way in, and then I saw Kirara jump in through the window. And so, of course, I didn't think that she would be sleeping right under the window.
You never know with her.
Sometimes she's at our feet. Sometimes she's not even here. Well, Melty, honestly, you're here now. So why don't you join us for our recording? I know you're a huge Farina fan.
Yeah, the Farina sense was tingling. Not in a weird way, mind you, but
Oh, wait. How long have you had this psychic connection with Farina? Is your constellation tied to hers?
Oh, God.
gosh, Tevat works in many mysterious ways. And I think that's all I'll say on that topic.
Oh, okay.
I'm taking note of that for later, guys.
Uh-huh.
Well, travelers who don't know, this is Melty, one of the co-hosts of The Resonance, a Genshin Impact podcast. You might recognize Melty as being one of our contestants on our Jeopardy episode when I fooled everyone with my questions that were wrong. But we've had Emerald on before as well. We had Dalton, who was one of the initial co-founders of The Resonance, on as well. So we're super excited to have Melty on for Farina today, and we're excited to see what lore and tidbits you bring our way.
Yeah, I was hoping that you wouldn't turn me down.
That would have been a really long ride for no reason.
Yeah, I'd probably have to climb back out the window.
We'd let you out.
Well, I don't think either way that I would survive Kirara. I think I'm going to have to wait till she goes to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
might be sleeping here tonight. Dealing's gonna come in to open up and be like, "Who the hell are you? Get
We'll
out!"
just nudge Venti over a little bit so there's some room for you.
He's snoring at the bar right now.
I promised Emerald that I would make it back in time for our next recording session. So I think I'm going to have to, at the very least, stay here for the night. And then first thing in the morning, I got to head right back.
Yeah, you don't want to get bopped with her bat.
Yes.
Yeah.
That bat is scary. She's taking a card out of the Trailblazers book.
Yeah.
It's not the first time. Don't mess with the bat.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's jump into it then. So I did want to start with saying that this has been by far the most requested
Yes.
episode that we have ever done.
Mhm.
For good reason.
And it's been requested so many times that Spotify Creators, who is the program we use to host our podcast and our RSS feed, has started to block Farina requests as spam in our comment section. And it's the only comments that I need to approve as of lately are ones requesting Farina. We've been asked if we're ignoring people's requests. We've been attacked about Farina. So we're doing it.
We every episode we get a reminder on Spotify. Still no Farina, huh?
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, there are
Finally,
other places.
Farina.
If you look in the Discord, you might find me asking for Farina as well.
Yes. We did not mark Melty as spam, though. So, I guess to start, what were your guys' initial reactions? You know, our first meeting with Farina after we leave Dea in Caravan Ribbit, and she kind of bids us farewell and wishes us good luck. We end up in that harbor area where we end up meeting with Linny and Lynette. And then we round the corner and meet Farina. What were your initial thoughts?
I was still playing with the hot pockets that
Oh my
Lynette and Lenny gave us.
Yes. I really could
I
use
was
one
like,
of those
what all
pockets.
can I fit in here? I'm like, never gonna have to carry a messenger bag or a merce ever again.
Just throw Paimon in there.
What were they actually called?
Doesn't they have like a weirdly long title, like amazing mystery bags?
Arataki
I don't
Ino
know.
numero uno bag for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were giving out like pita pockets basically that could fit all your stuff in it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think they were just called magic pockets.
oh, that's kind of boring.
Yeah.
They should have named them the TARDIS pockets.
Yeah, bigger on the inside. I mean, if you can't have a titty sword, you can have the next best thing.
A hot pocket bag.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're given this bag. I don't even know if we got one, but Linny and Lynette were giving out bags that basically could fit your whole life in them. Very like Mary Poppins or the grandmother from Halloween Town. Like you could fit whatever you want in there. Because they were anticipating that this flood was going to come and try to kill everyone. I would like to know if a person could fit in this bag, pocket, whatever.
Mm.
But I digress. after we deal with Hot Pocket, Pita Pocket, we run into Farina. And I gotta tell you, I hated her. I was so ready to fight her.
She was giving villain. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, she was.
She was kind of like attacking us a little bit. Like, like, why are you here? I'm going to get you. Putting herself at odds with us, I would say, when she doesn't even know us yet.
But she'd heard of us, which was kind of scary too. I was like, oh, I have a reputation? Oh, okay.
She was like, you've been fucking shit up in all the other nations. I don't want that fire here.
Mhm. And then she's like, and why do you have something floating? You're not allowed to have something floating.
Okay, that law. So there's a law in Fontaine that on the first 3 days of the month, you cannot release a flying object. What the fuck type of law is that?
It never came back, did it? We never had anything about that flying rule ever again.
Nouvelette does mention it in one other place when he's talking about some of the strange laws that they have in Fontaine. Another one being that you cannot name a domestic pet after Farina. So don't try naming your cats, dogs, or fish after Farina, guys. It's not a good idea. It's literally illegal in Fontaine. But what happened in Fontaine that led to them having to make this law of the flying objects?
Well, they do have a lot of flying planes and flying things.
I've never seen a plane. I've seen a blimp.
Well, yeah, I guess a blimp.
I mean, are they having drone attacks?
Yeah.
They have that. Maybe it's because of the what's it called that makes the stuff float? Like, they have those giant cubes floating in the air. You know what I mean? Like, they had the whole accident that caused the explosion. What is it? The Natural Institute of Philosophy or whatever.
The Fontainian Institute, I think.
Yeah.
I think the one you're thinking of B is in New York.
Would that mean then for the first 3 days of the month, no one's allowed near the Fontaine Institute because those are flying objects?
The whole place is illegal for 3 days every month.
Mhm.
But also, Paimon is therefore illegal 3 days out of the month. And she tries to literally lock us up. We've just stepped foot into Fontaine. We've talked to 4 people. And Farina's like, jail now.
I loved her.
Don't you feel, though, that they have these silly laws as an example or as a clue to show that their sense of justice is very non-traditional and bizarre to a lot of people? Because they have their trials like entertainment, I feel like that makes sense for the world building of Fontaine, because it's very this place is crazy.
Yeah.
The way they do justice is a little off.
Also, do you guys remember when we found out Farina had more than one outfit look? And she had a dark look and a light look, and we were like, what does this mean?
I remember when we first saw that there was the Numa look and then the Osha or Owisha look. I forget how to pronounce that correctly. I remember when we saw those looks, and there were people on the internet that were saying oh, the Numa look is her final design, but the Osha look is her beta design before she became a playable character or something. It's
Yeah.
people going back and forth. And then when her splash art got leaked and it showed her Osha form, they were like, is this a beta design of her splash art? It's really confusing. And then we found out that it's both.
Mm-hmm.
For travelers who might be a little confused of what Melty is talking about, in Fontaine, there are 2 different types of energy that they use to kind of keep things balanced, and that's the Numa and the Ossia, or however they're pronounced. One is blue, one is yellow. You've probably seen it while you're playing in Fontaine. Probably never really understood what it was though, because they don't really properly explain it. But when she's in the more white version of her outfit, that's her Numa form, and when she's in the dark blue color, that's her Ossia form. So just to let travelers know, because it's a kind of confusing mechanic that they don't do a great job of explaining.
Listeners, in case you couldn't tell, Melty is a diehard Farina stan, and we definitely wanted a Farina expert on this episode, because I think it's safe to say that the 3 of us, Feeny, Tiff, and myself, we like Farina, or at least I do, but I'm not her biggest fan. And we know that people are obsessed with her. So we wanted that to be represented. And Melty, I'm just curious, and I'm probably going to be asking you questions like this throughout the episode, but I'm just curious, were you sort of like excited for Farina before she came out, or did you fall in love with her like after the storyline was going?
Here's my history with seeing Farina for the first time. The first time I think she was officially like seen, not counting leaks or as we call it on the Resonance, forbidden knowledge.
Mhm.
The first time we saw her was in the big like character trailer for Fontaine, where it showed off like Neuvillette, Wriothesley, Navia, Cloran, Sigewinne, all the cast, and we saw
Mhm.
her at the very end. And a lot of people were confused on whether she was going to be the Archon, or if Neuvillette was actually going to be the real Archon, or if Neuvillette was a villain, or other things like that. And then you got the people like with the other theories, like, oh, Wriothesley's blind or whatever, and that didn't turn
Mhm.
out to be true.
I liked that theory. Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Anyways, so I saw Farina for the first time, and I didn't hate her, but I was kind of like indifferent because we barely knew anything about her.
Mhm.
All we had to go off of was her design and her voice. And her voice at first put a lot of people off because, you know, it just sounds like snobby rich brat,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which, especially when you get into Fontaine for the first time, is what you're like hailed with at all angles. So when we first met her in Fontaine and she was given this whole performance like, I am Farina de Fontaine and I'm going to place you under arrest and we're going to have a battle in court.
I was like, ooh.
All this ridiculous stuff. A lot of people were getting upset because like, oh, she's just a shallow one-note character. She's going to get like replaced or something or blah, 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 blah. She's like a terrible Archon. I could tell from the first minute, and I don't want to make myself sound like, oh, I knew it all the time. But like, I thought it was pretty obvious that there was more to Farina than meets the eye originally, because Genshin has yet to have a character, at least I feel, is just simply one note that
Mhm.
is a playable character. Like even with like Fischl, for example, Farina is just like a souped up version of Fischl.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're both similar in many ways. They both love the theatrics. They both have companions, or they both get like elemental skill companions based off of like books that they read, which is really funny. They both have like the persona, like theater side, acting side, and then the actual like realistic human side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the characters, especially the Archons, they always have some kind of reveal or twist. I actually felt the same way of, oh, they're making her so annoying, and there's no way that they're going to keep her like this unbearable for all of Fontaine. So there's definitely some kind of twist that's going to happen where
Exactly.
our perception's going to change of her.
Mhm.
But were you immediately like, ooh, or were you just like, okay, now I'm intrigued?
From the moment that she started playing up the whole thing of like, I'm the snobby brat Archon and I'm all powerful and everyone respects me, I'm the like queen of the court, I knew the twist, because like you said, every Archon has their own twist. I knew that the twist with Farina was definitely going to be very interesting as to why she's acting like this and what powers she might actually have, or if she has any at all, and what's going to be revealed. I knew that the game wasn't going to show it for a while and that we were in it for the long haul. From that moment, I was a Farina defender because I knew that she was going to get a lot of shit from a lot of people who may not realize what twist is going to happen or may not realize that she's more than a one-note character. It's understandable at that point that a lot of people wouldn't like Farina because, oh, she's the snobby brat. When are they going to put her in her place when she's going to get more depth? But I could tell that there was going to be more to her. And thankfully, I was very right that there is a whole lot more to Farina than meets the eye. But at that first interaction, if you don't have the foreknowledge of understanding that Genshin doesn't just ever leave their characters one note and unlikable like this, the closest to a playable character that I outright hate is Dori. But, you know, Dori fills her own purpose as being a snobby little brat in her own ways. But
I love my greedy little monster Dory.
I hate Dori.
In my head, I heard you say Goru. I was like, yeah, no.
Oh, wow, Tiff.
No, I don't hate Goru, Dory. But yeah, so my first interaction with Farina was I could tell that there was more than meets the eye. I wasn't a diehard number one Farina fan yet because I
Mhm.
still had to wait and see as to what that twist was going to
Mhm.
be.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I was very much a defender during 4.0 and 4.1 before she became playable and before the game really focused on her.
Right.
Because the storyline after we first have our first interaction with her kind of just focuses more on Linny and Lynette and then Navia
Yeah.
and then the whole prison thing with Risley and everything. And we don't get much about Farina until near the end of 4.1, where she has the whole meeting with Arlecchino. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny though, Melty, that you keep saying the snobby brat, because the only thing I could think of when I met Farina the first time was Fischl. I felt like she was Fischl on steroids, just a big theater kid. But she also reminded me of Chloe from Miraculous Ladybug. And I don't think anyone here has probably watched it, but it's a kid show.
No.
And she's this she's the daughter, she's French, so perfect. And she's the daughter of the mayor, and she's always this is ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. And that is just how I imagined Farina right off the bat when we met her. But before we get too much into our point of views with Farina during the Archon and how she is involved in that quest, I think we really need to do a brief recap of Fontaine's history. I feel like every time we come in and do a big Fontaine episode, we need to give this quick recap just so that we can understand it a little bit more and have this fresh in our mind.
Yeah, I can give the very brief Cliff Notes version. I think we did this back in our Remuria episode as well, where we went into more detail on that. If anyone wants to go back and dive a little deeper into it. But for what you need to know for the Farina episode, you have the primordial one, which we're all familiar with.
An egg.
An egg. They create the microcosm of the world with its eggshell, with their eggshell. They remove the 7 sovereign dragons from Teyvat, completely usurping their rule. This includes, of course, the original Hydro Dragon, who was described as the quote-unquote beating heart of the primordial sea. The primordial one's shade of life then creates Egeria to be the new beating heart of the sea. And Egeria, of course, creates the Oceanids and commits the original sin by giving them human form. One of those Oceanids was actually Egeria's quote-unquote familiar, which is interesting after the Aimiko episode when we see this word again. Her familiar, and this was an Oceanid named Focalor. So Focalor was one of Egeria's Oceanid familiars that became human when she committed the ultimate sin by giving the Oceanids human form. That was a big no-no. The primordial one was like, how dare you? And Egeria, there's a whole thing where she's imprisoned, then she gets out later.
Then she gets out on bail.
Yeah.
Protected by another dragon.
Yeah, and then she goes and fights in Sumeru during the Cataclysm where she dies. And when she dies, at some point after that, Focalor, her familiar, becomes the new Hydro Archon.
Boo!
Yeah, I hate Focalor.
It was Primordial one that was mad at her. I thought it was Celestia that was mad at her.
Yeah, but
I think
isn't
of
that
them
the
as the
same
same.
thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't know that for sure. I mean, who knows? The primordial one could have already been.
I'm sure neither of them would have liked it.
Maybe the Shade of Life was the one that was mad.
True. Yeah. What do you mean doing my job?
Right.
Can I just say for a minute, and obviously this is the Farina episode, and I don't want to railroad it all, but you can't have Farina and talk about her backstory without having Focalor.
Mm-hmm.
As I am the number one Farina fan, I am also the number one Focalor hater.
As you should be.
Absolutely despise Focalor and all that she's done to Farina. And we'll talk about what exactly it is that she decided to do with her.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to say straight up, I hate her bitch ass. There are definitely more evil, technically quote unquote evil characters that we've been introduced to so far.
Dottore.
Yeah, Dottore is terrible. We don't know whether or not the Tsaritsa is going to be all evil or if she's going to have her own twist good side, like how Farina has her own twist to her.
Yeah.
But Focalor is just, again, as a number one Farina fan, I look at what Focalor did to Farina. I find it very funny that one of Focalor's voice lines She says, but one can only play the hand one is dealt. I did not choose this any more than I chose to be one of her Oceanid familiars. And she's referring to how Egeria basically claimed her to be the next Hydro Archon after she died without much say from Focalors. And so she's like, oh, woe is me. And then she decided to do the exact same thing to Farina. It's like, okay, you're going to be the fake being the Archon for me now. And she has no remorse for her. And it's like, she's such a fucking hypocrite.
I feel like I might be the only one. I don't hate her. I'm okay. I'm like, yeah, that sucked. Sorry, Farina, that you had 500 years, and I feel bad for her, but it was for the greater good. Like, they didn't turn into water. She saved a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in between, but I know a lot of people feel the same way, Melty. I know like Beefy from the Shade Chamber feels the same way as you, where she fucking hates Focalors so much. But I think it's fascinating because, as we'll get to in a little bit, I just think it's really fascinating that people hate her so much when technically they're sort of the same person, or at least they used to be. So I think it's interesting.
Well, they're not anymore.
Right.
And
yeah.
they're not by
They're
the time
not.
she
They're
starts
really
doing
not.
all the stuff that she does to Farina.
It's also creepy that gods can just create people.
Yeah.
I mean, Ruka Devada did create Nahida from like a branch. So,
well, the question though too with Egeria, Focalors, the Primordial Sea, is that we know Egeria, when she was born to become the new beating heart of the sea, she was made of Teyvat goods. You know, like she was made. Not to be confused with Teyvat goods. Store. Not the pop-up shop.
She was made from Amazon boxes.
Yeah, just a bunch of like Zhao umbrellas. But she was made of like, she was homegrown in Teyvat, you know, all the materials used to make her are of Teyvat. And I wonder if that does make it different, where she was able to take, you know, the Primordial Sea, which she was already the beating heart of, and make something of it because she was from Teyvat. I don't know if, I mean, we hope that all the other gods are from Teyvat, but we have no fucking idea. I mean, Zhongli might be Welt Yang. I don't know.
I mean, A made a puppet.
I know what you mean, because the other gods, as far as we know, I mean, the other archons, as far as we know, are not made of like the raw material of Teyvat.
Yeah.
But they could be, I guess. We don't know for sure. But we know for certain that Egeria was made by the raw material of Teyvat, meaning no part of her came from Celestia or the primordial one. So even though they formed her or created her, they used materials that were only in Teyvat, nothing from the outside. And they sort of differentiate that in the lore for a reason, because the Primordial Sea in, you know, ancient Teyvat, that was the creative force. Like, that is where life originated from in Teyvat, first emerged from the Primordial Sea. So, you know, the Primordial Sea, it's not just that Egeria is the beating heart of the Primordial Sea. The Primordial Sea is also kind of the beating heart of life in Teyvat. So I hear what you're saying, Feeny, where it's like, since Egeria was made of this raw primordial creative force, you know, when she creates the Oceanids, like Focalors is one of her creations, meaning the Oceanids probably also come straight from Teyvat's raw materials. So that could explain why she's able to separate, you know, herself and create a being. Or, I mean, Egeria created a lot of beings, but Focalors sort of took it to the next level after she was already the Archon.
I think that's a good stopping point in the history of Fontaine, because then we lead into what we learned about Farina during the Archon quest. So, as we mentioned, we first meet Farina after we've arrived in the Romaritime Harbor. We've already talked with Linny and Lynette. We've talked with some NPCs. And let me tell you, Lynette kind of freaks us out. And Linny offers to take us to the Opera House to meet Farina. They do forewarn us, between them and the NPCs, that, you know, Farina is the Archon, that she basically lives in the court of Fontaine, and that since people like her so much, it's really hard to actually get a meeting with her, and you should schedule an appointment in advance. So I kind of felt like I was scheduling like a meeting with a grief counselor and not like trying to meet an Archon. But Linny and Lynette start to bring us to the Opera House, and we don't get, or I guess to the Court of Fontaine, and we don't make it very far as Farina appears, and she's quite obviously trying to make a fool out of us. She's talking about how she knows us, like Melty said, all the fires that we've been putting together. And I'm like, we've actually been putting out fires, lady. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she knows who we are. So she starts to threaten us, and she's like talking about how she's going to fight us. So the traveler draws our sword just to be careful, get on the defense. And at this point, I was like, yeah, fuck him up, traveler. And Clarine kind of steps in like, Farina, chill. Like, I'll defend you if I have to, but what's going on? We kind of learn at this point that Clarine, who is a champion duelist, is also kind of like a bodyguard to Farina for the most part. But Farina seems kind of impressed that we were willing to fight her and like stand up to an Archon, which is nothing new on our end. So she decides to stand down, and she tells us that she will duel us in court, whatever that means. And she threatens to arrest us for breaking the law of having a flying object on the first 3 days of the month, referring to Paimon. And we talked all about that law. I'm not going to get into it again. And Lenny kind of saves our asses. He does a magic trick to make like it look like Paimon is a balloon. And also is like, they literally just got here. They don't know the rules, Farina. Let them be. And Farina's like, ha 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 ha. Fine. And she says that she'll see us like sued, basically.
I wonder if Farina, like Lenny clocked Farina in that scene. Is like, as you can obviously see, they haven't broken any laws. They're not tricking anyone at all. I wonder if Farina was like, that's rich coming from the House of the Hearth. And then she was like, oh, wait, I can clock them later when they're on trial. And then she had the like big reveal scene, like, aren't they from the House of the Hearth? And then the traveler's like, what? I wonder if Farina was just like planned it from that moment.
Yeah. Playing the longhand.
I'm going to go no, because Farina had no idea that there was going to be a death at the magic show. And if she did, I'd be pretty pissed that she didn't do anything to stop it. Like, that was like, there was no foresight into, you know, magic murder.
Did she have it in her back pocket just waiting for the right time?
Probably.
I don't know. I almost felt like she did more research into them. Like, I think Farina deals with a lot in this. And I think because of that, because of all the stuff that she is dealing with that is very major, you know, she has a lot of like macro things for Fontaine that she has to figure out. That like the identities of the two magicians that make her giggle, I don't think that's ever mattered to her.
I don't think she has much to do at all.
Yeah, I don't think she does.
I don't also think that's like private knowledge that they're from the House of the Hearth, though. Like, I think that's just something that she can like send like, hey, you researcher, go find out their origins. And then like an hour later, the guy comes back, is like, they're from the House of the Hearth. And she's like, oh, great, I can use this in this murder trial that they're on now.
Yeah, that's what I think happened, is I think that she does do that during the trial. But I don't think ahead of time she knew it. And what I mean by she's doing a lot, it is hinted that Farina is meeting with people almost daily, that her schedule is so booked.
I don't think her schedule is always booked. I think sometimes it is, but it says that her main functions besides the trials and her performance schedule when she's doing plays, they are kind of like limited to just diplomatic social events. So the social events are basically all she does. And it says that she got so bored that she tried to get involved in the day-to-day duties of the Palais Marmonia, and everyone was like, no, that's okay, we don't need you. Don't worry about it, don't bother yourself, Archon, we got this.
We're not worthy.
Yeah. In which I'm like, did they really mean it that way, or are they just like, no, we don't want her screwing things up?
Yeah, you're not really sure. We're like, this isn't a good idea, or this is beneath you.
But so I don't think she is always that busy, but I do think that she's like, I could also see her like not paying attention to who people are unless she's had direct contact with them, because she tries to keep everyone at a safe distance so no one can figure her out.
The other thing, though, I think that's interesting in that same character story, when we learn about how she tries to join the ranks of like doing stuff in the Palais, she goes and just decides she's going to spend time with small animals because she loves them so much. She ends up not really finding like the ones that like jive the most with her until she finds the blubber beasts laying on the beach, like catching up some rays, and she gives them telerubs. Like, that's what she does in her free time.
You know what I love so much about that story is Farina needs so much attention that she annoys all the other animals except the blubber beasts.
Because they're just sitting there like, meow, meow, meow.
Yeah. They're just laying down on the sand. She can squeeze their cheeks, rub their belly. She can literally just turn them over and over in the sand, and they're just like, they don't care.
Yeah.
Every other animal's like, leave me the hell alone, and they
Yeah.
attack her.
That aside, so the next time we do see Farina in the Archon is at Linny and Lynette's magic show, where she is quite literally sitting on her high horse because she has her little Archon chair all the way high up. Meanwhile, Nouvelette is sitting next to us. And while we're at this magic show, we have magic and murder, where someone dies. And so when the death happens,
Beanie's favorite
Beanie's
thing.
favorite part of the story.
murder. I've heard a lot about my serial killer tendencies this weekend, so
Just embrace them. Go with it.
after this death happens, Nouvelette is really the one who takes charge, which is interesting to see given what we've been exposed to so far with Farina and with Nouvelette. So Nouvelette locks everything down. He starts to investigate, and Farina is like, Linny, you're a suspect of the murder. And Nuvi's like, you pressing charges, ho? Like, is that what we do in here? And Farina's like, yes, duh. And Traveler, you're gonna be his lawyer. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What? I did not go to school with Yanfei or Kuki.
She's like, I'm gonna get you on trial one way or another.
She's like, this is how I'm gonna duel you. Is I'm gonna defend the nation and you're gonna defend Linny. And I'm like, great.
Well, it's probably because we learn at the end of this that she needed to get a bunch of indemnitium and trials and stuff. She probably thought that this was going to be like the trial that was going to be so big that it would do her duty or whatever it was that she was, what she was told by Mirror Me is what she calls Focalors.
Right.
Because Focalors told her that she needed to wait for the day where like a trial so grand and so much like indemnitium would be collected that it would avert the prophecy's like terrible consequences from coming to pass. So in her mind, I think even like back at the harbor at the start of the Archon quest, she saw the Traveler and she's heard like the Traveler's done these great things across Tevat. Maybe the Traveler is the key to making that great trial happen.
That's interesting.
Maybe that's why she's
Yeah.
on our case so much. And she's like, I want to take you to trial and all that stuff. And that's why she's like, you're going to be Linny's lawyer and things like that.
Right. And for travelers who don't know, indemnitium is like the power that is like it's the power of the Oratrice. So every time there's a court case, the like it's kind of like the vibe is feeding the Oratrice Mechanis de Linny's Cardinal. So every time that there's a court case, there's more power going into the Oratrice. It is becoming stronger. And we find out why that's important later on. But that is what indemnitium is.
It's also powering all of Fontaine too.
Including the two different power sources of Numa and Os whatever.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to look at in retrospect after you find out that Farina has been incentivized to drum up extra drama during these trials and get people super interested and feeling things about them. I don't think they really address it super clearly later, but when we get to the end, it's really interesting to think back of like, well, of course she's acting like that at every trial.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with us when she thinks it could be the big one, you know?
Yeah.
Because she's known to like not go to any smaller ones because she knows that she's not going to get the like effect that Mirror her told her. Like it has to be like one of the grandest trials of all time. So of course,
Right.
like for instance, I forget, but I think Risley mentioned that when he was put on trial for like killing his like what was it like
His family.
adopted parents? I
Yes.
think it
Sounds
was.
better when you're like his
Yeah.
family.
Yeah, his family, all of them. No, but when he got put on trial, wasn't it like Farina didn't even show up? I think is what was mentioned.
I think as soon as he pled guilty to all charges, she was like, all right, I'm gone.
Yeah, and she left.
I think the reason why she left, I don't think it was solely because she thought like, okay, this trial obviously isn't the one, like a child murdering like a bunch of people isn't going to be grand enough, I guess, for Mirror Me. But I also think obviously it's like a horrifying thing to see like this child who's so small killed these two adults. So I just think like for however many years she had been doing her act at that point, she couldn't see any more like heartbreak. So I think she just left and she feigned boredom for it.
Okay, that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think she was like, yep, no, now if I was Farina, I would have been like, child murdering people, this is my court case. I would have been like, this is the one. This is going to do it for me. But I understand that she'd probably seen 500 years of court cases at this point, and that wasn't the case. But the next time we see Farina after she assigns us to be a lawyer without a degree, we're at trial. And Farina is questioning Linny and then exposes him and his siblings as being members of the House of the Hearth. And there's a lot of back and forth. Farina is starting to gain the audience's favor. But then we ask if we can investigate the clothes of Cowell, who was the one murdered. And while Farina does not want to let us, Nuvolette does. And during this investigation, we do find primordial seawater in his bag. But Farina then tries to corner us by saying that there was also primordial seawater in Linny's bag. And a quick recap for travelers, because it's been a while since the Fontaine Archon quest first came out. Primordial seawater, if it touches a Fontanian, will make them go poof, because they are all secretly oceanids on the inside, and they'll just return to their primordial sea form and become water. They don't even become oceanids, from my understanding.
No, they did.
They did. So having primordial seawater on you does not look great. So Farina says that there was actually primordial seawater in Linny's bag too, which then sways the audience back to Farina until Navia bursts in and helps tip some of the favors back to Linny. Very, very long story short, before we see Farina again, we hear this mysterious story of missing women. They decide to blame Child, who, just so happens to also be in Fontaine at this time. Child really doesn't care, and he's very meh about the fact that he's on trial. He thinks that this will give him an opportunity to get to fight Clarin.
Child's just on vacation, I think. Like, he just so happened to be here, and then he just gets thrown into this whole thing. That's really funny.
I don't really think he's on vacation, though. He knows why he's there. He's on a mission.
Yeah. I mean, he is important enough that Arlecchino sent Linny, Lynette, and Fremne into the place he was imprisoned later on when he goes missing. So it's like, as in like the Fatui, maybe they sent him for like ulterior motives.
Well, no, I mean, according to the Fatui, Child was quote unquote on vacation. Like, that's what his PTO said. But Child said he felt a calling to Fontaine, and he talks a lot when we run into Child earlier on, and he talks a lot to the Traveler about feeling drawn to Fontaine and about Skirk and about the Abyss, and he actually gives us his vision to hold on to because it hasn't been working. So he's on a mission. He is in Fontaine for purpose. The fighting, the getting arrested, that's not necessarily his purpose, but he's kind of meh about it. He's got to figure it out. This is when we end up going to the Synth lab that is underwater, and Synth is like the illegal alcohol that is made with primordial seawater that really gives you a good high because it's made of stuff that could literally kill you.
It's a really creepy thing to think about. Like, their kind of like Fontainian drug is made with, what was it, like only primordial seawater, or was it like specifically the dissolved people from the primordial seawater?
It's just primordial seawater mixed. It's diluted primordial seawater. I don't believe it's made of dead juices.
Gosh, that could have been very dark if it was just like, oh yeah, we're getting high off of dead people.
Yeah, I think I'd remember cannibalism. We haven't really run into much of that yet.
Would you like a shot of Vache victim number 1?
Do you want a shot of Karen over here? I heard she pissed you off last week.
Limited supply.
So we go to this synth lab to find proof that Child isn't to blame. And we do find proof that he's not to blame. And we find out about Vache and all this jazz. I'm not going to go into detail about Vache. We have episodes on the Fontaine Archon quest that you can go back and listen to if you want some more details here. But Farina is not happy about waiting around. And Navia tells her that physical proof that Child is innocent is on the way. And this is when we discover, much to Farina's shock, that Callus, who is Navia's dad, let himself die in the duel against Clarind, and that Navia was supposedly supposed to be one of the next victims of Vache and this murder spree. And we end up proving the Child's innocent in a very runaround, confusing manner. And Nuvolette is like, yeah, that's right. But we still have to ask the Oratrice. But I also agree, not guilty. And then the Oratrice says that he's guilty. Child tries to, foul legacy. Nuvolette stomps on him. And we're like, what the fuck is going on?
Child was like, all right, I'm gonna head out. And Nuvolette was like, where's your ass going?
Yeah, he was like, you heard the Ortrice. No. So Nuvolette then asks Farina what they should do, and she freezes up at first. And it's kind of clear that she's really not sure of what to do, that this has never happened before, that the Ortrice has disagreed with Nuvolette's opinion. And before she agrees that Child is in fact guilty, she's a little unsure, but nonetheless is like, yep, if the Ortrice says guilty, then it is right. So now we're sending Child to jail. Nuvolette tells us he's going to try to help us or whatever. Skip ahead to Farina meeting with Arlecchino, aka the Knave, another Fatui Harbinger and the head of the House of the Hearth. She requests a meeting with Farina and meets with Farina and Nuvolette when she hears that Child has been sent to prison. And she says, like, hey, I would like custody of Child to be turned over to me. And they're like, well, Child's actually kind of missing in jail. And she's like, missing? What do you mean missing? And that's when we get a little lore about the jail. I can never remember the name of it. The Marmalade.
Yeah, the Marmalade. There you go.
What is it, Tip, though?
Now I'm just going to say Marmalade.
No! Okay, it's the Marmalade.
Meropide. It's
Meropide. We get some lore about Meropide at this point and how they basically function as like their own country. It's kind of crazy. And we end up going to prison to try to look into this. After our stint in prison, we return to the surface and Nuvolette asks us basically to babysit Farina throughout her next meeting with Arlecchino.
Yeah, because Nuvolette has to go take care of like the primordial sea starting to break out of like the bottom of the fortress of Meropide. He's got to go like send it all back while like Wriothesley and Clorinde are dealing with it. And he's like, well, shit, I gotta deal with that. But also, if Farina's left alone with Arlecchino, she's going to slip up and like fuck shit up. So it's like, Traveler, you can babysit her for me.
Which is interesting because it's very clear at this point that, and it's clear later on too, that Nuvolette does not know that Farina isn't the Archon. So it's like, what was he afraid that Farina was going to slip up?
I think he just knows that she just always needs a little bit of a helping hand because she changes her opinions on a dime. Like she's always like trying to get herself, talking herself out of things. Like she'll say one thing and then be like, oh yeah, no, I did mean that the skies are orange. Never mind. So I think it's just like his daddy kind of thing. That
His
sounded
father.
so bad. But you know, like I meant more like a father
Whoa.
figure.
Oh yeah.
Not a,
Oh,
not
Whoa, a daddy figure?
It's his daddy kind of thing.
No, I see Farina and Nuvolette more as like a father-daughter type scenario.
that's actually
especially
what I
after
meant.
everything we learned of like with the Fos lore and stuff. I don't personally ship them together.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Especially don't ship Farina and Arlecchino together because Farina is fucking terrified of Arlecchino. And it's like we find out that like Arlecchino basically assaulted her in the middle of like an alley in the middle of the night to try and get the noses. It's like, how can anyone think that Farina wants all that?
I mean, listen, we're not here to kink shame, Melty.
Not kink shaming,
I was,
okay.
I was gonna
Hey.
say, do you guys ever play the game Daddy or Daddy?
I've never heard of that.
So like you're walking down the street and you see a couple, like you see two people, and from my context, it's usually gay guys that I'm playing this game in my mind with. And one is much younger than the other, but you can't tell if they're related. So you're like, is that person's dad? Or is that person's daddy? Like, is it daddy or is it daddy? So it's just a fun game to play with yourself sometimes.
Just like sometimes it's like haha thing to do.
I bring up Arlecchino and Nuvolette as well because I think another reason why Nuvolette asks us to go basically babysit Farina is because he knows that Farina is scared of Arlecchino and that she would freeze up because Arlecchino isn't afraid to ask the important questions, not only of like why Child is missing, but also like why the fuck isn't Farina doing her job? Like people are scared out of their minds about the prophecy, and Arlecchino even flames her on it at one point because she like lures her into like a false sense of security, like, yeah, enjoy the cake I got you, and then at the end of it she's like, yeah, now why the fuck aren't you doing your job? People are dying and you're here having tea and you're literally eating your cake and having it too, or however you say the phrase. And so I think Nuvolette, even then, we see at the start of the Archon quest in 4.1 that Farina is begging Nouvellette to come to the original meeting with her for Arlecchino. So I think Nouvellette knows that things will not go down well if Farina doesn't at least have someone backing her up. So I think that's another reason why Nouvellette asks us to do it. And then also because he needs to go deal with the Primordial Sea.
He's like, I can't babysit today. Who is around? Who can I call? And then we show up.
I'll pay you $20 an hour.
So we go to this meeting with Farina and Arlecchino, and Arlecchino basically straight up is like, you're doing nothing to help the prophecy. You're doing nothing to help your people. They feel the shaking coming from underground where Nouvellette, Wriothesley, and Clorinde are trying to deal with the Primordial Sea. And she's like, oh, look at that. And she asks to hear Farina's plans. And Farina's like, I have a plan A and a plan B. Don't you worry. She asks what those plans are. And she's like, well, that's confidential. And so the meeting, Arlecchino kind of changes pace. We get back to a friendlier meeting and we all separate. Arlecchino walks us out, in which case she tells us the whole story about trying to steal the Gnosis from Farina while Farina's outside playing with a cat. And she says that when she went to try to steal the Gnosis, that she could basically smell a curse on her. She reeked of curse, and that there was no Gnosis in sight. So, she quickly was like, abort mission, no murder.
You think she would just murder for fun, though?
It would have been so funny if Farina smelled herself after that. Oh God, smells her armpits.
Like, I'm into this.
Yeah.
Whoever smelt it dealt it.
We go up, Nouvellette ends up walking up to us while we're talking with Arlecchino, and after Arlecchino leaves, Nouvellette is like, I'm going to try to get more info about what the fuck is going on with my daughter. And we're like, thanks, Dad. And later on, you get a bunch of shit happening. Of course, you have the Poisson flood. Nouvellette is pissed, and he's telling Farina that she just needs to cut the bullshit. And then he wants answers, and he feels like she's hiding something from him, this was very confusing for me emotionally, because I was like, who's in charge? Who's the Archon? Is there a dragon? Like, who really has the power here? Like, if Farina's the Archon, why is Nouvellette acting like he's the Archon? It was a lot, it was heavy. And he wants the answers. He's not getting them. And he really wants to know what happened to these missing stone slates to tell the story of the prophecy. Something that we find with Navia earlier on. And Farina's like, well, I'm not a Jiria, and that was her business. And I really can't just spread information about my fellow Archon like that. So I'm not going to tell you. And she kind of pounces away.
You know what would have made this situation not only way more easier for both of them, but also just less trauma inducing for Farina about this whole 500 years thing? If Focalors had just, when she got Nouvellette into Fontaine to become the Iudex so that he can fall in love with humanity and understand them so that he can judge them not guilty by the end of it, all she had to do was get Farina and Nouvellette together and tell them hey, okay, you're both in on this plan. I still can't tell you everything, but you two can supporting each other, or you two can tell each other what you know. And that way Farina can at least have someone to talk to and not just go to bed alone and crying every night. And that way Nouvellette cannot be so frustrated when Farina doesn't know jack shit, because it's oh, okay, it's because she doesn't have the powers that the mirror version of her has, or whatever. It's Focalors could have made it so much easier for both of them, but no, she decided not to, because of her bullshit saying of to fool the heavenly principles, you must first fool yourself, which is, in my opinion, a terrible way of thinking, by the way, because if you can't trust yourself, then maybe it's not a good fucking plan in the first place.
But counter argument, though, if Farina and Nouvellette knew the truth about one another, we would have never had the trial of trials where Nouvellette decides he's going to put Farina on trial for faking being an Archon, which really is what leads to saving Fontaine.
Well, if Nouvellette knew about what Focalors told Farina, that there needed to be a big grand trial by the end of it, and that Farina would be put on trial, I think despite what he would think, he would go along with it if it did mean that it would eventually save Fontaine from the prophecy. And both Farina and Nouvellette would then know at that point, hey, no hard feelings. We both knew this was going to happen at this point.
Wouldn't that have also intercepted in Nouvellette's mind change into wanting to save humanity? If he knew that everything was just a show with an endgame, he wouldn't have wanted to save humanity. He would have just wanted endgame.
I'm not saying that Focalors would tell Nouvellette everything, because obviously she couldn't tell Nuvalet everything, because if she did, then Nuvalet would know that this whole thing is just a sham so that he could say not guilty. I think Focalors would bend the truth or not tell them everything still, but at the very least, she would like have them at least be supporting of like each other so that it wouldn't be so difficult for them to have these one-on-one conversations of like, just tell me. Well, I can't tell you. That's Archon business. But you're the Archon and the prophecy is going to happen. Why can't you tell me? Well, I just can't. You just need to trust me. Like, it would have been so much easier. But of course, Focalors didn't do that because, to fool the heavenly principles, you must first fool yourself.
I don't know. I think that if Nuvalet and Farina had been given any sort of insight into that, then it would have ruined the whole plan. I don't think they would have gotten to the point of the Archon must die verdict that they needed.
Two conflicting sides. I mean, I think there's any number of approaches she could have made to try to make it work. I mean, all we know is that she spent a lot of time down on the primordial sea bed thinking, like racking her brain about how to go about doing this. And this is the decision that she ended up making. I mean, who's to say she couldn't have done something else, you know?
The decision that she ended up making was everyone gets to succeed except Farina. Farina's the one who gets the short end of the stick. And even after the curse is off of her and after she tries to get into the rest of the Fontanian society, at the start, there are still like people like in Poisson who are like, ew, fuck you. You let everyone die. We believed in you. So it's like, she still got the short end of the stick. Even after Focalors is like, now I take the curse off of you. So it's like Focalors had to know that Farina would get screwed over by her plan, and she still went with it anyways. And she never even apologized to Farina by the end of it. She's like, oh yeah, I guess I should apologize to her. But no, I have the quote right here. What she says, thank you, Farina. From this moment on, please live happily as a human, just as I wish we could. That is not an apology, you raggedy bitch. Like, was it so hard to at least say, hey, I'm sorry for having you go through 500 years of this shit. Please forgive me. But no, she doesn't even say that. She's like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and kill myself now and let the plan go through. And it's like, Nuvalet has to be the one to say like, okay, I guess I'll watch after her and make sure she doesn't go off the deep end.
You know what my favorite Focalors quote is? I love it so much. But in my eyes, Farina's humanity was what made her perfect. She was perfectly human in every way, the person I always wanted to be. Anyway, so then I cursed her.
Anywho.
She's such a bitch.
Such callous, such like hatred. It's like, bro, why do you do this to Farina and you're not even sorry? It's like, she has no remorse. I don't believe she had any remorse for Farina. She just did this. I wonder if the whole reason why she's okay with herself for doing all this to Farina is because she believes like, oh, I'm going to sacrifice my own life so that Nuvalet can have the sovereign dragon powers back. So it's going to negate all the bad things I did to Farina.
I think that the reason that she's so cold about it, I mean, this is the way I took it, is because Farina contains all of her humanity and she separated that out of herself. So I took it as like almost like that lack of compassion as like her humanity's not there anymore.
That's a good point.
I hadn't thought about it like that.
But she's definitely villainous. Like,
yeah, but it doesn't make her plan look any better towards Farina. And a nice comparison I have for this is that if we were to go with Focalors indeed thinking that, oh, like, I'm going to die for this plan to work, so it's okay. It's all okay. It doesn't matter what else happens. It reminds me of, there's a song in Hamilton. I forget the exact name of it because there's like 50 billion songs in Hamilton. But it's the one where George Washington gets introduced for the first time. And he sits down and like meets with Alexander Hamilton for the first time. And he quotes to Lin-Manuel Miranda. He says, "You got head full of fantasies of dying like a martyr. Dying is easy, young man. Living is harder. And guess who's had to live for the past 500 years while Focalors just sat in the Oratrice just doing whatever it was she was doing? It was Farina."
That is a direct quote from Hamilton, by the way.
I'm a Hamilton fan.
That part. I mean, a lot of people don't talk about the Farina part of that Hamilton rap, but it was the best part of the whole show.
Obviously.
But let's backtrack really quick to the end of the Archon here that involves Farina. So after Nouvelette is like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to figure this out. A bunch of us decide that we're going to trap Farina, basically. And we bait her into Poisson, where she goes to kind of check out the crisis post-flood down there. And she starts to, like, crash out. So the Traveler pulls her into a house, and we're trying to, like, talk to her. And all of a sudden, the walls of the house fall away. And we find out that this is just some magical box, another pita pocket, and that has led us back to the Court of Fontaine, where we are now starting Farina's trial, accusing her of being an impersonator of the Hydro Archon. We prosecute her and we have evidence, and it leads to us making her touch primordial seawater. When after she touches the primordial seawater, and we deal with Siegeween, it's like a toned down version of the water too. We are able to prove that she is not the Hydro Archon.
But instead, she has a curse upon her, perhaps, that's letting her be living for as long as she is. Because one of her counter arguments is like, well, if I'm not an Archon, then how could I have lived for like generations? Like your grandparents and their grandparents remember me. And so our counter argument to that, and what we eventually come to the conclusion of, is like, well, Arlecchino mentioned that like she found like traces of like curse energy on you. And by the end of it, it's clear like the leading theory is that she's cursed. We don't know by what, but she's cursed. And she's just like, what? No, you all have to believe me. Like, I really am your Archon. And what's really interesting, like looking back on it with the context of Focalors telling her, like, if you fail, if they find out that you're human, it's all over and they're all going to die, is that she's begging not only for her life at this point, but also for all of their lives. But she can't tell them why. So all she can do, because she's powerless to all else, all she can do is just beg them, please don't do this. I am your Archon. You have to believe me. And we're like, why do we have to believe you? And she's like, you just have to. Like, you just have to. Like, trust me, bro. But we don't.
Imagine putting on a performance for 500 years that was torturing you. And then the fear that you would feel thinking that it's all about to collapse like a house of cards at the last minute, and it would all have been for nothing. Like the plan would not go through, and all of it was meaningless.
Yeah, it's basically like, this is going to be a weird analogy, but it's like chess, except normally in chess, if you move one of your pawns to the end of the opposite board, you can turn that pawn into like a queen, which is the strongest piece in the game of chess. What Focalors has done to Farina is basically a reverse version of chess, where the pawn is basically prepped up to look like the queen and can go wherever it wants. But by the end of the queen getting to the end of the board, the rug is pulled under it and it's revealed to everyone it was a pawn the whole time.
Did you guys see Lady Gaga at Coachella, by the way?
I didn't, but I definitely saw what music video she had there, where it's like a chessboard kind of thing.
Yeah, she did. So she does Poker Face. She and all her dancers are on a giant chessboard.
Oh, I was like, where's this going?
And they're like the pieces of the chessboard. So it just made me think of it because I watched that on YouTube yesterday.
Are you imagining Focalors and Farina dancing on this chessboard now?
Well, I just like I like that they were singing Poker Face, and Farina's been trying to have one for 500 years.
Do you think that Lady Gaga plays Genshin?
I think Lady Gaga is Farina, you guys.
No way. I gotta be a C6 Lady Gaga fan.
But basically, we proved that she is 100% guilty. She is totally not the Archon. And when we ask the Oratrice what it wants, it says that the Archon is guilty and must face death.
DEATH.
Death. So there's a lot of confusion here because we literally just proved that she is not an Archon. So how in the heck are we supposed to kill the Archon? We don't know who the Archon is, where the Archon is. And this leads to the whole, like, here comes the narwhal, here comes Child, here comes Skirk, like...
Big story going on. It's interrupted by a flying narwhal.
And Child being like, yes, my precious, come back. And there's a lot of fighting and blah, 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 blah. But then that's what leads to the beautiful Focalors Farina dance and a lot of tea drops.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh. That animation is one of the best cutscenes that they've done for Genshin, because it's just so like after getting like the whole exposition dump first of like what Foslore's true backstory is and how she created Farina and how she cursed her, and then it cuts back and forth between her and New Valette talking about it, and then the Traveler witnessing it all happening in Farina's mind of like from her beginning to her having to do this act for the past 500 years. And I will say this, Foslore is not the only culprit in basically fucking up Farina's life for the past 500 years, because the people of Fontaine back in the day were no better. Because here comes Farina on her first day of ascension, is what they call it, at the like Palais Mammonia. She goes up on stage and she's like, "Hey guys, my name is Farina de Fontaine. I am going to be your new Archon. I hope you guys are excited. I hope you guys are pumped up for this. Feel free to leave any, like," she basically does the Tales of Tevat like suggestion box thing where it's like, leave all your suggestions at the door, leave all the bad suggestions with the narwhal.
Yeah.
Yada yada yada. And the people of Fontaine are just ruthless. They're like, "What? This isn't the Archon. I thought an Archon would act more godly or whatnot." It's like, maybe the Archon didn't really die and this is just a puppet or whatever. Not to mention the people of Fontaine in the past were these are probably also the same like racist towards Melusine's people that we're dealing with here. So that doesn't make it any better. So Farina, in a snap decision, has to decide to don her personality of, "Oh, it was all an act. I'm glad you could all see through it so we can move on to a brighter tomorrow." And I like to think that Farina in the moment thought like, "Okay, that's good. I'll use that for now." But then later on she was like, "Oh shit, you're telling me I have to keep this act up?"
Yeah.
So we see her going through the motions of like day 1, day 2, and then we see the days go by. As like all the days go by, we see her same mundane routine go through. It just gets harder and harder and harder and harder. And I have a quote here. The game shows like whatever day it is, but I think if you put it into a calculator, however many days it shows by the end of the scene goes up to like nearly 500 years. So right before the Traveler enters Fontaine, we see her the night before at like her bed, and she's breaking down. And I'll read the quote here. She's saying, "So interminable, so lonely. Just how much longer? Hundreds of years must have passed by now. Perhaps this show must go on for hundreds more. I never imagined it would hurt so much. Have I reached my limit? No, perhaps I reached it long ago. Today, I didn't even notice my own tears. I want to tell someone, anyone about this, but would that not destroy all I've done so far? I've conducted so many investigations across the centuries, but there's not even a sliver of hope that we might break the prophecy. All I can do is keep heart. I must maintain this act. It is the only way to save Fontaine. Please mirror me. You have to succeed."
And then Melty sobbed.
Yeah, actually, I'm actually a fake Farina fan because that didn't make me cry the first time I saw it. It got me close. The first time I've actually cried to Genshin was recently with the Abyss War in Natlan and seeing everyone dead, and then seeing certain characters also die, and it was really sad, and I got super teary-eyed to it. But, you know, I will say, though, going back and doing research for this episode to be on, it did make me cry going back and listening to the voice lines, because there is an option to go into the archives of the game and every voice line is there, and that's great for note taking. But it's also very sad and depressing because Amber Lee Connors, the voice actress for Farina, she does a fantastic job of making her an unlikable brat that you want to see like get off her high horse, and then seeing her super like relatable and sad and depressing. And then she also changes her voice to just being more mute and mature, and then you get the Foslore voice that I know and hate. So she does a great job.
And the camp comedy as well. Like, she has so many levels.
I knew Amber Lee Connors before this, actually, as she was the voice of, I believe, Toy Chica from Five Nights at Freddy's, which is a really funny thing to know her from before this, because she plays Toy Chica kind of in like a similar way to Farina, even though she played her before Farina. So every time I'm like listening to FNAF voice lines and it gets to Toy Chica, I'm like, wait, that's just Farina.
Like, what are you doing in 5 nights?
So we see Farina at the end of that, and then we see her having the same memory of the Traveler being like, hey, it's okay, you can open up to me. And Farina's like, well, they are an outsider. They're not from Tevat. Would it really be that bad to give me this one chance to open up? And then she shuts herself down and she's like, nope, I know what my plan is. And the Traveler is like, fine.
We're like, all right, trial it is then, bitch.
Yeah. And then from there, it basically leads into what you were talking about, the Sinner's finale, I believe is what it's called, the cutscene.
And that's where we really get to see all this lore. All the tea is dropped at this point. This is when we learn that Focalors has been planning this. This is where she tells Neuvillette that she is going to yeet herself and that she's going to destroy her celestial throne. And that once she does that, there will no longer be a need for an Archon. It was a lot to hear. Meanwhile, Farina is dancing and in her mind, and we're seeing that as the Traveler and hearing this tragic backstory that she's had to go through as well.
Did anyone else think it was funny, kind of like weirdly funny, that Focalor has been hiding in the Aura trees
Yeah, it's a little creepy.
for all these years? It was so like...
It's even mentioned all the way back at like the Linny trial, is that Linny went underneath the stage at one point because I forget it was like he had to hide there or whatever. But while he was under the stage, he heard a voice, and that voice doesn't get brought up until the very end of this, where Focalor just reveals, "Oh yeah, that was me.
Yeah.
Like I just talked to Linny." I'm thinking to myself, if you've gone through this whole 500-year plan of hiding yourself and pretending that you didn't exist and that Farina was the Archon, why the hell would you just say something to Linny and risk like revealing yourself and ruining the whole plan? It's like you just spent however long at the bottom of the sea floor thinking up this great plan, and yet you're just gonna ruin it at the last second. Like, are you just bored?
Was she as delirious as Farina?
I think so.
Like, I'm so fucking bored. Just let me talk to someone. She's like, I just have to say something.
I'll talk to this little magician. It won't matter. He won't even know.
Hey, how you doing? And he's like, what the fuck? And then he just leaves.
He's like, the opera house is haunted.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck, and now I'm in a murder trial because I got distracted. Like, what is happening?
But I love that Sinner's finale is one, I love the song just in general. I think it's one of the most beautiful songs that's in the game. But just the way that they did the whole thing is just so nice. And I want to say, like, Neuvillette got me. His reaction, although like subtle and stuff, like I was just like, oh my God. I don't know. Like, what is he gonna do?
I appreciate that she is afraid to die, and she sort of says that, it's like something that humans and gods have in common, because it makes me think of like the other archons of like, are they afraid to die? Because you kind of think of them as living for so long that they probably aren't really afraid to die, but I guess they are.
But the question also becomes, is it like, she's not originally an Archon, right? She was like Focalors was a familiar chosen to become an Archon.
Yeah, she was an Oceanid.
Yeah, does she have a fear of death because she wasn't an Archon from the start? Like she's not a god like the others.
Well, yeah, I guess she wasn't
born a deity.
Right. We don't know if the others really were. Like Venti used to just be a wisp. That's kind of like an Oceanid.
But it's like he's a mystical being, right? Like, or Oceanids. Like, I think it comes down to like, what is a mystical being too in the game, right?
Yeah, I guess we don't know if there was more to Wispy Venti.
Yeah.
Other than elemental energy, but an Oceanid is just elemental energy too.
And water.
Yeah.
And drugs.
But was Venti created by something else also outside of just the elemental energy? And does that make a difference?
Yeah.
I do want to say this is a great time to pivot to these other Archons because, like I said in Natlan, when we finished this, I thought to myself, where the heck have these other Archons been? Have none of them thought to talk to the Hydro Archon where they would have also smelt the curse juice on her?
Well, I think before, they don't really leave their places. Like, Venti's the only one who's like, let me go hang out with Zhongli.
Venti seems very aloof, and he seems to have a haha good time.
He just wanted alcohol.
We know Nahida and A were like locked away.
That's the thing,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, do you think Zhongli knew?
It's a good question.
Do you think that was part of his contract?
Did he know that Egeria was a puddle?
Yeah, and like, what's going on with Mawika too? You know, like
She had other
Well,
problems.
yeah. What isn't Mavuika like? Mavuika threw herself into the sacred flame to be basically come back to life 500
Mhm.
years later to help at like the end of their abyssal war.
Mhm.
Right.
I guess like 100 years before the current game events, or however many years it's been, she came back. So I don't think Mavuika would like be too privy to the fact of whatever's going on in Fontaine. I also think
Right.
she doesn't really care because Fontaine is the least of her worries when she's got the abyss like attacking every
Yeah.
other Tuesday.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just like so many other things in this game, it seems to always come back to, well, I guess we're really just talking about Venti and Zhongli.
yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, even like you could also kind of pivot on to the side of, well, why didn't anybody go save Nahida? She's in a bird cage.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I've been saying. This like the
Yeah.
whole game is
they don't seem to care outside of their own little worlds.
Mm-hmm.
It's their people and that's it.
I blame Zhongli.
Yeah.
Zhongli probably knows everything. That's true.
All I do know though is that even after Brandon, what you said about Focalors dividing her human half and all of her human emotions into Farina, and so Focalors doesn't feel any of that. That's a good theory. I like it. I still think that death is too good for Focalors, though, after what she did to Farina. I think
Uh-huh.
she should have been put on like a proper trial instead of like taking the death last minute. And it's like, oh, I'm the hero because I killed myself. And so, like, here, Nuvola, you can get your powers back now. Like, obviously, that's not exactly how it went, but still, I also really appreciate Nuvolet's character in this moment because even he doesn't exactly agree with what Focalors has done for both misleading Farina and misleading him, because he's like, you are a devious one, Focalors, when she like mentions like, well, I guess you're gonna have to judge the people, and he's like, obviously I'm gonna judge them not guilty after all what you told me. Like what else am I supposed to say? And she's like, haha, I tricked you.
Well, so let's also remember that the whole reason Focalors is doing all of this, and I also think part of the reason Focalors was so, I don't want to say cocky or devious, but so like almost like spiteful about it. She found it so hypocritical that Celestia cursed Egeria and then therefore created the prophecy that was a death sentence to everyone in Fontaine, because Egeria had the audacity to create the Oceanids and then give them human form using the primordial sea. And so she thinks that that's really hypocritical of Celestia because they took over Teyvat from the dragons that were there before them.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can you judge Egeria for creating something that wasn't there before when you created humanity that wasn't there before and kicked
Right.
out all the dragons?
Well, if she has this big problem with Celestia of like, why are you getting so mad, bro, at like Egeria and like cursing Egeria with this prophecy? And then she turns around and it's like, okay, well, for my plan, I'm just going to go ahead and curse Farina, who's even more innocent because she's literally just been created.
It's terrible what she does to Farina, but it is also, she's trying to get justice for what the Primordial One and Celestia did to Teyvat. Like, that's also in play. And I don't think anyone really ever talks about that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's like important to remember is that, yeah, like what she did to Farina is fucking awful, but she's also doing it to save everyone in Fontaine, like literally save all their lives. And B, restore a little bit of justice back to the dragon pantheon
Right.
that was wiped out by the people that are in charge and are the same people that are going to kill everyone in Fontaine for no good reason.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a lot of no-win situations.
Yes, exactly.
And let me say too, like Focalors is my top 5 least favorite characters.
Good.
She's always been there, but at the same time, she was handed something as well that she did not want.
Mm-hmm.
And in all honesty, Egeria was made and given no choice too, right? So there's a lot of what is it called? Like ancestral trauma going on here that's kind of getting passed down too from grandmother Egeria to mother
Yes, inherited
Focalor.
trauma. Yeah.
Farina gets the worst of it, and that's just my main problem with Focalor is this. Like, yes, you're correct. She's not a bad guy in the sense of like she wants everyone to die. No, the whole point of why she's doing this in the first place is to save everyone in Fontaine. It's just that my problem lies with like she cares so much about saving everyone, but then she cares so little about whatever happens to Farina in the end, and she just uses her as a pawn. And she doesn't even say sorry at the end. She's like, "Oh yeah, I probably should," and then she didn't. Like, you, what is wrong with you? You fucking raggedy ass.
I like that. That's what got you the most. Is that she said, "Oh, I should probably apologize for this, but peace out. I'm going. See ya."
I'm glad she's dead, but also death is too good for her.
This is why we had to have you on, Melty, because I love how passionate Farina fans get.
I am the number one Farina fan, at least when it comes to the podcast side of things.
Yeah.
And I will also, there has been rumors at least in the Resonance Discord server. I'm sure they've been said once before in the Shades of Tevat Discord server too. But no, I am not the guy who spent $600 of like the fiance's credit card and then broke it off because of Farina. I am not that guy. I have never been engaged or anything like that. Although, yes, I can understand where people might think that of me, because I am actually one of the people who do have Farina at C6. So I can understand why people make that joke. But no, I'm not that guy.
We have set the record straight. Let it be known.
Let it be known. But so after the Archon line, after all this stuff gets settled, Farina is able to go live a quote unquote normal life. But as we know, coming off of being in such a traumatic situation, living a normal life does not come easily after going through such a trauma. And Farina pretty much becomes depressed afterwards. She doesn't really know what to do.
Yeah, and you can't really blame her.
She goes to her apartment, right? That isn't Nouvellette bankrolling
She
that?
rents an apartment.
She doesn't even unpack anything. She just sits in her bed and just stares at the wall or like the ceiling all day, just thinking like, what am I supposed to do with this freedom now? Like, I have this freedom, but like, what am I supposed to do? And it's like, again, I have another voice line of like Nouvellette talking about at the end of the Arc Conquest, after we've dealt with everything and we beat the Narwhal up and we see Skirk and all that stuff, and then the prophecy, yada, yada, yada. Nouvellette, when we ask him about Farina, he says, "I related Focalor's words to her faithfully and completely. After hearing them, she seemed neither saddened nor comforted. She simply said that she was tired and she needed to rest. Having said that, she then packed her things and moved out of the opera house, not unlike how an ordinary person might. You need not worry. I will make arrangements to ensure that she will not want for food, clothes, board, or travel. In truth, I am somewhat happy for her."
So he's her sugar daddy. Or is he her sugar dad?
Yeah. The tear on her spirit will, of course, take time to heal, but now that she no longer has to play the role of Focalor the Hydro Archon, she can finally lay down her burdens and try to lead a normal life.
Now, when Focalor died, are we all at a consensus where her death breaks the curse that she placed on Farina? So Farina is now just going to live a normal human lifespan? Because her curse was immortality, right?
Yeah, in the apology that's not really a fucking apology, Focalor says, "Thank you, Farina. From this moment on, please live happily as a human, just as I wished we could." So she takes the curse away at that point after she dies.
I love that. She's like, "Please live happily." And then cut to Farina staring at the ceiling.
Exactly. It's like, how do you expect her to live happily when she spent 500 years living a lie? You fucking idiot!
I wish they had addressed this more in her story quest of like her grappling with the fact that she now has a normal lifespan and she kind of has to like make the most out of living her life because now the clock is ticking, you know? Because that must be a really big mindfuck too.
Well, no, instead we got Paimon just being Paimon and saying rude things to Farina. It's like, wow, you live here? Such a downgrade. It's like, Paimon, shut the fuck up.
Also, we know that the first person who came to visit her was Clorenne.
Mhm.
who actually like helped her unpack, sort of dragged her out of bed, helped her unpack, got her to like come out to a gathering and drink with friends. And that was like the first time that she learned she didn't have to be alone, because Farina was so used to keeping everyone at arm's length before, because she couldn't let anyone get too close because they could, they could actually uncover her identity. So she's not used to like not being on a pedestal and actually like getting close with people like as equals and being friends with people. I just thought it was interesting that Clorinde was the first one that did that. I didn't know that. And
Yeah.
after seeing Clorinde's story quest where she brings her to D&D, I ship it. I'm into it. I'm into the Clorinde
Really?
Farina. Yeah, I think it's cute. I mean, no offense to Navia lovers, but
I have never thought about Farina and Clorinde as a ship. It's my personal headcanon that I don't think that Farina, at the point of her life, of her new life that she's in right now, that she's focusing on any relationships in terms of romance. I think she's
Mhm.
got a million other things on her plate right now. I think eventually one day she might, but I don't see her character as like instantly wanting to do that, especially since all of her friends that she's now friends with were the same people who put her on trial and said, yeah, you're not the Archon, get out of here.
yeah, no, I definitely think she should stay single for quite a while, because she would be a complete mess.
Well, she's
romantically.
actually dating me, you guys.
Oh.
Actually,
Well, I will let Clorinde know.
Oh no.
So you better watch your back, Melty.
Clorinde has Navia and Risley at her disposal. I think she's fine.
Nah, she needs all of them.
She needs to be a team player and just let Farina stay with Melty.
Yeah.
I will say, I thought it was very sweet that it was Clorinde that went to visit, because, when you learn that Clorinde has kind of been like a bodyguard for Farina over the years, and she talks
Mhm.
about the fact that like prior to the Archon quest, she would stand behind Farina and like guard her basically while she was out at all these luncheons, and now she's getting to be the one to sit with Farina at luncheons and eat all these sweet treats, and she's like, now I understand what Farina meant when she said it was hard to keep her physique. Like shit, there's so many
Mhm.
baked goods at these things. And I think it's really sweet to see that like Clorinde's kind of been like the silent guard friend all along.
Yeah, like even though it's not her duty anymore, she's still doing it.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, Tiff, because it'd be really easy for Clorinde to be like, she was my boss and she was such a nightmare. Fuck that. I'm like, I don't have to deal with her anymore.
Farina was like Michael Scott on The Office,
Yeah.
making the worst decisions possible. She's
Yeah.
like, thank God. But it's like, no, she genuinely cares about Farina, and I believe how it's said is that she comes over, she's the first person to come over to see Farina, and she sees that she's in this stupor, and she's like, come on, like get up, let's like help like unpack your things. And then she invites her over with some of Clorinde's friends to go out and have a few drinks, and all it takes is like 2 drinks, I think, or even less, for Farina to get back to like her normal social self.
Can I just say, like, can you imagine being one of Clorinde's friends and Clorinde's like, I'm gonna bring someone new to the bar tonight, and she walks in with fucking Farina?
Yeah.
Like you're like, Clorinde.
We're not worthy.
Here's the fake Archon who's been deceiving us.
Yeah, I've told you all about like my life working for her. Well, here she is.
Do you think anybody, like, I mean, granted, they're all pretty much happy that they're alive, but do you think that there's also a side that they're like, this bitch has been lying to us? She is not the real Archon.
Yeah.
I definitely think that, because we see in her story quest, when we go to Poisson and we're with the theater troupe, Navia comes up to us and she says that she told the people of Poisson that this isn't the real Farina, but instead basically like a cosplayer for a play, because the people in Poisson, some of them are not happy with Farina, because even though they understand that she's not the Archon, and I'm pretty sure at this point most people in Fontaine are up to speed on the whole Focalors plan and what really happened, or maybe not all the details, but like the basic gist of it. But some people are still holding a grudge against her, like, hey, you said that you would help us and that you had the power to stop this, and then when it happened, you did nothing. So we don't want you here. So there's a lot of tension there. And so I think even after the story quest, even after she starts to become a director, and then she's a part of Clorinde's D&D group and all this other stuff, I think there's always going to be at least some people in Fontaine who are going to hold a grudge against Farina because she didn't do anything, even though it was out of her control.
Yeah, especially people from Poisson that got
Mhm.
flooded, with the primordial
They've
seawater.
lost so many people.
Yeah.
Definitely. It also goes to show to Navia's character that she doesn't hold it against Farina, especially after she lost Silver and Malus from that. She understands that Farina isn't the one to blame over all of this.
She is one of the most forgiving characters
Yeah, I
in
was
this
gonna say with
game.
Clorin even,
Yeah.
like
You killed my dad, but it's fine. Let's scissor.
Jeez, scissor me timbers.
Can we talk for a second about like what exactly happens in Farina's story quest? Because it's kind of a big deal for her character arc.
It's a turning point for sure. Well, I guess I'll let you guys start it off because I played it back in 4.2 right after the Archon quest, because at that point I said earlier in the episode that at the start of the Archon quest I was a Farina defender. By the end of the Archon quest I was a Farina #1 fan, so I definitely wanted to play her story quest and see what happened there.
Mhm.
But I don't remember everything that happened in it. And probably part of that is because I was pissed off at some of the lines that Traveler and Paimon were saying, like negative towards Farina. It's like, bitch, she just spent 500 years living a lie, and you're going to be mad at her that she's not living in a fancy house anymore? Like, okay.
Yeah, I think the story quest, it was more just like the fun of watching her adjust and
Mhm.
like start to have fun again. But, she just basically she agrees to help a troupe put on a play called The Little Oceanid. And at first she's very, like the very short version of it is at first she's very adamant that she doesn't want to act again because she's like, I've been acting for 500 years.
Mm.
But then at the last moment, she has to fill in for a troupe member who gets sick. And then while she's acting at the end of her scene, there's supposed to be a prop vision that appears, but her real vision does. And she actually gets her vision in front of everyone, which is a special moment. And then that's also when she decides that she's going to step behind the curtain and begin directing plays afterward, which is nice because it kind of sets up like a new career path for herself. So she has like, a trajectory.
And the whole
Mhm.
like play that she does too, like it's so emotional because the Little Oceanid story is very much hers. It's about an Oceanid trying to save Fontaine.
Mm-hmm.
While it's not a 1-to-1, it's pretty much the same thing. Like the Oceanid in that one sacrifices herself, but you can say that Farina did too. Like she sacrificed her life really for 500 years to
Mm-hmm.
save the people.
When Farina decides that she's going to go on stage in the place of Dolphy is the name of the actress who gets sick last second, Dolphy asks her a question. What, in your opinion, is the reason Cleo, which is the Oceanid in the play, what is the reason Cleo shines so brightly? And Farina says, it's her pure heart. Despite all the pain and loneliness she had to endure, she never once stopped believing in the beauty in this world. And Dolphy says, well said. I leave director Aureli in your hands. And director Aureli is basically, it's kind of a cool like connection to the rest of Fontaine, because the whole point of like why the theater troupe is in shambles at the start of the quest is because their director Aureli ended up being one of Vacher's dissolved victims. And so the troupe has been they kind of had infighting about it. It's like, oh, you let her die. Or it's like, oh, I didn't know what happened, and all a bunch of stuff like that. So over the course of it, we have to go to like Poisson. We have to go to like into the hills somewhere. We got to basically get the gang back together. It's like that one Phineas and Ferb episode of like, we're getting the gang back together. It's like, I forget the name of like the band in it, but it's kind of like that. And then by the end of it, Farina has to basically take over directing capabilities that no one else there can do.
Mhm.
And she kind of figures out by the end of it, and especially after getting her vision, that this could be taking her freedom into a new direction. And here, I'll read this as well. I'm reading a lot of quotes, but this is the last big quote that I'll read. And this is what she says at the very end of the quest. After the Little Oceanid does well, and one of the theater guys like credits Farina while she's on stage. It's like, hey, I didn't ask for that. Like, why are you crediting me? I didn't want to be credited. And so it's really funny. But what she says at the end is this. I think a return to obscurity is no longer an option for me. I'm sure a slew of consultancy requests will hound me wherever I go until I finally acquiesce. What I mean to say is that this whole experience has shown me that perhaps I'm not as averse to a return to the stage as I previously imagined. Maybe Neuvillette was right. Maybe Cleo is the right role for me. I still don't wish to pretend to be someone else, but I do desire to express myself. So maybe the show will go on for me after all. There was once a time where I was an actress in a masquerade, seeking only to hide the truth. But from now on, I want to spend my time learning real stories about real people and how they touch the lives of others around them. I want to watch them blossom and wither, see them refined on the page, retold on the stage, and remembered long into the future. I'm sure this is what captivated director Aurelie as well. If this vision that I have received is a gift from the gods, then I should do my best to honor it.
I love that. And we knew that she loved to perform even outside of the role of Farina, because she would act in people's musicals and plays even when she was the Archon.
Yeah.
There was like a system where like, okay, this troupe is going to put on a play, and they would send Farina an invitation just hoping that she might be in the right mood to agree to perform in it. And then if she agreed, that play would be like the smash hit. It would be like a festival in town, basically. But then she would be really bossy to all of all the people in the troupe that she agreed to perform. Like, no, this set isn't good enough. It needs to be more elaborate. The lighting needs to be like this. The music isn't good enough.
She's like the Gordon Ramsay of it all. She's like, you fucking donkey, you're doing it wrong. Where's the lamb sauce?
There's even a story that talks about a time when there was a troupe that she decided she was going to do the play, and they were like, we'll just listen to her, but we're not going to do any of it. She'll just be happy that we took care of it. It'll be fine. And the director goes to the opera to like start doing the setup and stuff and sees Farina there with a whole other troupe. And he's just like, what are you doing? She's just like, well, you obviously didn't care for my ideas, so I'm going to do it instead with these people. Guards, take them away. And like she like has them like kicked out and steals their play because they wouldn't listen to her.
That's so real. Because imagine having to, she's probably already stressing out about doing this, like acting for 500 years. And this like other form of acting is like one of the only like ways that she can like, I don't know, spend her time other than stressing out about the prophecy. And so to have these other humans who have the audacity to be like, no, we actually know better than you. You can like go sit in the corner. It's like, of course she's going to be like, no, fuck that. You're replaced. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I almost took that as like she lets the role of Farina, where she's like forcing herself to be an Archon, even though she doesn't really want to be, but she has to convince everyone that she is the boss. And so she lets that take over like her actions. And especially when it's something like set design and like because basically she should be a director.
Yeah.
And so when she's actually like excited to do something that she likes to do, because normally she hates every minute of her life. And so now she actually gets to do something that's exciting and that she wants to do. So it has to be done exactly her way. So it's like half of it is her being like excited to actually do something. And the other half is she's in Farina mode at all times, where like, I'm the boss, I'm the Archon, everyone has to do what I say. And so it kind of created these like really bossy and I would say kind of nasty moments from her.
Yeah. I did want to go back just to Farina getting her vision.
Yes.
This is the third character that we get to see receive their vision.
Don't remind me of the first, because I'm going to get like Vietnam War flashbacks to the Aranara quest.
Oh, but we love Rana.
Yes, bring back Rana.
Rana.
I don't remember a single thing about her.
What?
I blocked out the R&R quest in my mind because listen, every Genshin player who's gone to Sumeru has had the same type of story where, oh, look, it's a word quest. I guess I'll just go up to it and do it. And it's like 20 hours later, you're in like 3 different R&R quests. It's like, what the hell is going on?
Listen, we have a whole episode on that saga, but Rana, you know, she gets attacked by a withering man, and then the R&R try to save her by locking her in a net in a tree, basically. And then we save her, and then she gets a vision. And Rana is like queen, because she literally like fights with you at one point. She's just got like an axe.
Yeah.
And she's just chopping away. And I'm like, this is my queen.
Yeah.
I would love for them to bring Rana in and debut the new weapon type of hatchet.
Hatchet, yeah.
Yes.
You know what? No, I'm not getting the Rana hype. If anyone deserves a vision, though, it's Jet.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Jet deserves it way more than Rana, because what did Rana do? She fought by her side like a couple times, and then she went to sleep in like a cocoon, basically.
She survived the withering.
Oh,
She survived the Aranara.
she
Odyssey.
survived like however many years in the desert, and then all the stuff that we had to do with Jet.
It was her longevity. She didn't die for the whole Arenaris
Yeah.
series. She survived that long.
Yeah, and I'm surprised I didn't die while doing it all.
But so Rana is our first, and our second one is, of course, Wanderer getting his vision while he's like in the middle of an internal crisis.
Emo boy.
Yes, and so to see Farina get her vision was just another beautiful moment. And it's
Mhm.
I remember when we saw Rana get her vision, we didn't see it. We just kind of saw it. So we were like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! Like this is beautiful." And then getting to see Wanderer receive his vision, I remember I remember talking to Brandon specifically about how crazy that was. Like what a moment it was to see someone getting a vision so powerful and so life-changing. So it was so nice to see Farina, who lost all of her powers, and lost anything that she had, get those powers back. And so she's getting the mindset of like, I'm switching my life around and I'm going to get back out there and do things and maybe act and direct. And also she's getting her vision back. And it's almost like they're giving her back a part of herself. They're like, hey, we know
Yeah.
what you did for 500 years. And this is us saying thank you almost.
But it also brings us back to the idea of who the hell gives the visions, because it obviously ain't the Archon.
Yeah.
Is it Nouvelette?
It's Nouvelette,
He's
yeah.
just like, yeah, I'm gonna. It would be really funny if I did this right now. Like,
Mhm.
I'm
It
gonna
is
pull a
Nouvy.
funny. I want to say also that I think whoever it is giving the vision to her, I think it's also like an affirmation of Farina deciding to take on this like new passion in her life of directing, because until at this point she's starting to have fun with it, but she's still kind of on the fence. But it's not until she gets her vision where she has that speech where she decides like from now on this is what she's going to want to do, and she wants to honor the vision that she received from it. So I think in that way it's also like an affirmation of, yeah, you're correct in thinking this is like a good new thing for you to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know what the first thing she does when she gets her vision?
She floods her apartment.
Well, no, first she goes to try to beat up a local legend that she had once angered by accident, and it did not go well.
Isn't that local legend also Hydro, so it would just be immune to all of her Hydro attacks?
Probably. Yeah. Depending on which one. Yeah. Yeah. Then she's like, okay, I guess I should study this vision and figure out how to use it. And that's when she accidentally floods like her entire apartment building.
Mhm.
I love that Nouvelette's like, damn it, the rental insurance just went up.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn it. But also, so we mentioned Farina's new life as a director. We actually get to see her director debut, basically. I don't know if it's a director debut necessarily, but we get to see her in action in what I like to call the Guns N' Roses event, the Muskets and Roses
The
event.
Fontania Film Festival. Yeah, that's I think I see it as like she's done a few other like smaller directing things on the side. I think her first directing would be credited as The Little Oceanid. I think that could be the first one, and she's done
Mhm.
probably a couple of others in between the two things. And then I think Guns N' Roses like the first like big hit that really put her on the mark. I think it would be safe to say, because that's what, spoiler alert for an event that's already happened over a year ago, but her directing and everyone else's acting ends up getting them first place in the film festival. And what's funny is the award for getting first place is called the Farina Award, and like they haven't changed it yet because what
Mhm.
happened in the Archon Quest was so recent, and she's just hella embarrassed to receive it because she's like, oh, I don't want to be the Farina that's like cocky and accepting the award with my own name. It's like, that's super embarrassing.
Right.
It's really funny how everyone's like, no, go on, you earned it, you're like a great director. And she's like, I guess if I have to.
For travelers who didn't get to play this event, we just called it Guns N' Roses, but it's called Roses and Muskets. It is a Fontaine story quest that actually starts with our good old friend Xavier. If you don't remember Xavier, he's a member of the Daydream Club. Whoop whoop. Which we'll get into later in the season. We originally find him in Inazuma
With his stupid hat.
with his hat. We learn that he's from Petrichor and all that jazz. But he's basically trying to make a movie in Inazuma, and we help him.
And then we later get dailies from him, right?
Yeah, so Xavier is now back home in Fontaine where he is trying to enter this film festival. And this film festival, like Melty said, the trophy is called the Farina. They decided to just name it that way anyway. He has like a big investor, but then something happens and the investor drops out. But don't worry, Ayaka's here, Ayato's here. Why?
Yeah, I believe
Yoimiya.
it's said it's because they want to like increase relationships between Inazuma and Fontaine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Originally, Ayato is the main one going there to talk to like Nouvellette about strengthening relationships, and then Ayaka and Yoimiya are like along for the ride. And then Ayaka, Yoimiya, and originally Ayato as well, they get dragged into the whole movie thing because I forget who says it exactly, but it's mentioned that like having Inazuma actors in like this Fontanian film would also like strengthen relationships between the two nations. So, of course, it's revealed shortly after that Ayato can't really act for shit, and so Chevreuse takes over his place.
Isn't that a little odd? Because Ayato lies all the time and has to be convincing at it. So you'd think he could act.
I think he was acting like he acts bad because he wanted to get out of there to talk
Yeah,
to
he's like, I
Nouvellette.
don't have time for this.
Yeah, I think he was also busy. He was just like, I got a billion other things to do, but it's like, have fun, sister.
He was like purposely trying to aggravate Chiori the whole time, which we know
Mhm.
Chiori is originally from Inazuma as well and grew up knowing Ayato and Ayaka before she came and created her Chiori boutique in
Mhm.
Fontaine. But yeah, so long story short, Ayaka, Ayato, Yoimiya, they all volunteer to help out because Xavier's budget stuff has gone through. He lost all of his funding for his film. We end up pulling in Farina. And he's a little nervous, but he's like, all right, there's no other choice. We'll take Farina. And there's a whole bunch of jazz that happens, but their film does win despite all the drama and all the extra shit that happens. And it was like a really proud moment, not just for Farina, but for Xavier. I was like, I've known you for so long.
I've hated your hat for so long.
No,
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
hat. Be nice to his hat.
What's cool about Xavier as well, though, is that even recently, as like I believe it was last version, we had another like film event where we go back to Fontaine and we meet up with Xavier, who basically is just like, hey, I need some more help with you, like editing these scenes together. It's just basically a repeat of one of the side modes that we could play
Mhm.
in the original event. And what's cool is one of the advertisements that we can like put the pieces together is for Cloran's D&D group, which we see Farina is still a part of. So it's cool to think that even after Cloran's story quests and the D&D group seem to like disband for at least that adventure, we see like, no, they're still getting together and they're still doing it. And we even see Farina is like frazzled as Navia keeps like making incorrect like assumptions that just happen to work out. She's like, wait, you want to talk to like the cryo Regis Vine instead of fighting it? And then it ends up working out. And she's like, okay, whatever.
It's such a D&D thing to happen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's truly the best part of Clarence's
Yeah.
request is how annoyed
Yeah.
Farina gets at Navia. Like,
Yeah.
what is she doing?
One of my favorite creators online I've been watching lately like talks about the D&D campaign that they're DMing. And for travelers who don't know, D&D is Dungeons and Dragons. It's like a role-playing RPG game. I'm sure most of you know, but just in case. And this person does like pie charts based on like what they do during the campaign. And the one day he pulled it off and he went, 55% of our time was spent running a bakery. Because the people walked into a city and this nice young old woman came up to them and offered them bread, and they basically accused her of like being a wench and took
Huh?
over her bakery.
Accused her of being a wench.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's
Is
something
it
crazy
illegal
like
to
that.
be a wench?
Well, I guess they thought
Apparently.
that she was like poisoning the bread. I don't know. So they took over the
Damn.
bakery and like ran a bakery. This same guy in his campaign, they went to help a gnome running a museum, and they basically found out that the gnome was like siphoning charity money for bad things. So they reported him to the
What?
IRS in the game. And it was just like, there's an IRS
The
in D&D.
IRS.
It was
Okay.
amazing. It was so good. D&D is a fantastic adventure if you have not tried it.
That reminds me as well. another thing, as we're talking about Cloran's D&D group, is that in Cloran's story quest, when Farina is with it, one of the running gags, I guess, is that things kind of go sideways towards the middle and end of it, where things start happening in the storyline and in real life too, that Cloran and everyone else realizes is like, okay, this is not part of the game. Like, what's going on? Because there's basically, what was it, like a hitman or like another like Sharosei hunter? I forget the kind of name of what like Cloran, what kind of hunter she is. I forget.
Yeah,
He was
Marachose.
Marachose.
Yeah, Marachose. Thank you. Marachose Hunter. There's another one that's trying to basically not kill her, but knock her out so he can take a key, and it's like a whole other side thing. But while all that's going on, guess who's unaware of all of it? Farina. She thinks it's all part of the act. And like when they like go to a cave and Cloran tells everyone to close their eyes because she's got to knock this guy out, Farina's like, oh, this is so scary, you guys. I wonder what's going on. At the end of it, when they go to like this dude's home, and we see, I forget what was like the name of like the spirit that was inhabiting this guy's body, like possessing him to try and take on Cloran. But they go and confront it, and they have these weapons that they took from the cave, and they're using them, like the power from it within them, to summon like the spirits of like the sword, the bow. I think it was 2 swords and a bow. I could be wrong, but they summon all of it, and then Navia like summons with like the dagger that Cloran gave to her, and there's a whole thing there. But what's funny is Farina still thinks that it's all part of the game at this point. Like, she's like, wow, these effects are so realistic. And like she calls out her saloon solitaire troupe to like fight it, and it's really funny. And then by the end of it, she walks off still thinking that it's all like one big game. And everyone's just like, yeah, we'll just let her believe it.
Yeah.
And it's really ironic that the person who should know how to act better than everyone else can't tell when she's being like acted in front of.
She's like, my whole life has been a lie. I don't know how to tell the difference. Like, shit.
Yeah. She's also like actually having experiences with people now instead of being a figurehead.
Yeah.
So I'm sure she's like overstimulated. Speaking of her salon solitaire, which are her little hydro minions that she summons.
Don't say minions. That makes me think of Despicable Me.
Her friends
Her
that
little
she
buddies.
summons. So there's a fun story behind this. Is they're inspired by a little known book that she found in the library about a character named Crabaletta, who is a servant who takes a job in a mansion where the owner is usually absent. And she becomes close with the other servants, but there's one rule: never open this mysterious door that like allegedly leads down to the basement or something. And so eventually the owner is finally set to come back to the mansion, but never turns up, and he's later found dead. And Crabaletta in the story that she's reading is convinced that it has something to do with this forbidden door. So she opens it, only to find herself back in the main hall the first day that she arrived. So she's in a time loop. And Crabaletta later uses this time loop to solve the murder and save the day, and everyone celebrates. So her helpers are based on characters in the story that she read that were stuck in a murder mystery time loop. And that is Mademoiselle Crabaletta, Gentilhomme Usher, and
Gentilhomme.
Thank you, and Surintendant Chevalmarin.
Yeah, Farina definitely has a bias towards the Surintendant Chevalmarin, blah blah blah, how you say it.
She's
The
like, make it
seahorse.
as French as possible.
The other two you can say like, oh yeah, Crabaletta or Gentilhomme Usher, but then the third one is like, how do you say that?
Yeah, Surintendant Chevalmarin, which is a seahorse, and then Usher is an octopus, I think, and Crabaletta is a, guess what, a crab.
An armored crab.
And then when she changes to her Numa form, she can summon Singer of Many Waters, which is basically this bigger kind of seahorse kind of thing. I don't really know what kind of creature it is. It looks kind of like a seahorse, I guess, but it's like Surintendant Chevalmarin is already a seahorse, so I guess it's just a healing thing.
It's giving like classic Oceanid with a crown on its head. It's almost like Rodea with a crown.
You know, it could be really cute. This one in her Numa form, it isn't mentioned in the storybook, right?
I don't think so, because I think it's just those 3.
Yeah.
And it's tied to her having to use her Numa form. And in her Numa form, her outfit and design is based on her design like pre Archon quest and Pre being found out to not be the real Hydro Archon. One of the theories I had is what this Singer of Many Waters is based upon is what if it's a representation of the little Oceanid, like Cleo, like this is what Cleo would look like or whatever. And because the little Oceanid is in a way, it kind of resembles Farina's story. And when Farina acted in that play as the role of Cleo, that's when she got her vision. And so maybe part of her vision and part of that comes into play with this being a artistic representation of the little Oceanid Cleo. And it would make sense because Cleo wants to save everyone in Fontaine and save all their lives. And so this version of Cleo, when you use her with the rest of your party, it heals everyone in the party.
That would make a lot of sense because she got the vision at the end of the play.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it would have been on her mind. Yeah, that's really cool.
It's just a little theory I had. It's probably not true, but it would be really cool if it was, because otherwise, like, I don't know what else this thing is.
My guess, if it's not that, would be my best guess, and I'm pulling this out of my ass, is maybe it's a representation of Focalor's form before the split and before she became human. Like back when she was Egeria's familiar. Maybe she looked like that.
I could see it being that as well.
I like the little Oceanid idea better.
I mentioned it at the start of this episode, but also Farina's backstory with how she got her animal buddies is pretty similar to how Fischl got her animal sidekick. It's just that Farina got 3 of them instead.
Yeah.
And her book is
Mhm.
her book is, I think it's more interesting than the Prinzessin, or at least it's
Don't you let
Ooh.
Fischl hear that.
Ooh.
Ooh, yeah,
Those
you gotta be
fighting words.
careful.
Thoughts have been
I mean,
fired.
Farina is just a better Fischl.
Oh my
Oh.
god.
Farina is, listen, do you really expect anything less coming out of the mouth of the #1 Farina fan?
Oh my god,
No,
but
of
we
course
love
not.
Fischl here.
Oh, I don't hate Fischl. I think Fischl's a great hoot and a holler, but I mean, we still have yet to see Farina interact with Fischl canon-wise. So that would be a really fun event, though, if it were to ever happen.
Oh my God. I'm imagining Farina meeting Fischl and just assuming that she's like doing some kind of performance art.
She's
like,
cosplaying
or,
as
like,
Farina. like-
practicing for a play that she's in.
Farina would love it at first, but then Fischl will keep at it, and eventually Farina will be like, okay, bro, knock it off.
Farina would be like, "What troop are you in?" Fischl would be like, "Oh, I'm with the what is she in the
I'm
Adventurers
with the
Guild?"
Adventurers
Yeah, I'm
Guild.
with the
Yeah.
Adventurers Guild. Oh, I haven't heard of that. I haven't heard of that troop. Are they named after the actual Adventurers Guild? She'd be like, "What?"
She's like, I'm in the Adventurers Guild. I'm in like a senior member. like
Mona shows up, and she's like, yeah, don't mind her. She's just
Yeah.
playing out of her ass.
Mona shows up and she's like, that's the Prinzessin. like, you better watch your ass.
She comes from
Like,
another world.
One of my other favorite things about Farina is that she kind of goes like after becoming not an Archon anymore, she goes into like the college lifestyle where she's just living off noodles and a dream
Yeah.
for the most
Mhm.
part.
Basically.
Macaroni.
Yeah, like she's always
Mhm.
making, but she's like, what type of sauce should I get for my macaroni? Like, so she's switching it up. I think she's like, having cavatelli every night, but the cavatelli has different sauces. Or no,
I
capitelli.
misheard you for a second. I thought you said Capitano.
Oh yeah, she's eating
Oh.
Capitano every night.
That's
He
a
is-
rare ship.
That's
He's
the
frozen.
sauce.
That's the
sauce.
sauce. Capitano sauce is
Capitano and Focalor ship. I mean, they're both kind of.
it's a wild idea. But anyway, we don't have to worry about that. But Farina, besides her mac and cheese and everything, loves tea and loves cake. Her love of cake is actually what gets us technically arrested and sent to
Mhm.
Meropine in the first place. And she loves tea, and she talks about the fact that Risley sends her tea all the time. Risley does that because he's still trying to like beg for forgiveness, which is really fucking sad. And also, Farina, her birthday is October 13th, and that, despite the fact that she's not an Archon, it's still a public holiday in Fontaine, and they still celebrate. And I just I want to be there for that. Like, we had a Nahida birthday event. When's the Farina birthday event?
Yeah.
I think the Farina birthday event is probably not going to happen. I think the only reason the Nahida birthday event happened was because in the Happy Birthday Nahida trailer, when we were getting Nahida drip marketing was that we saw that she was having a dream about how great her birthday would be. And then we see in reality, she never once had a great birthday because the moment she was awoken, she was taken by the sages and just locked away.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of like, we're sorry, Nahida, let's give her a proper birthday, which was one of the events that I was asking for the longest time. So I'm really happy we got that as an event.
Yeah, definitely.
I want the event where Farina directs a play with a bunch of other Teyvat characters.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Farina trying to direct Ito?
Oh my god, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, she would go crazy, and Cookie would basically be like reining him in. But I mean, there's so many performers now in the game. Like, it would be so cool to have like Venti, Barbara, Ayaka, Yunjin, Nilu, Shinyan, Gaming. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but yeah, that would be so fun to have all the performers come together.
Albedo
Albedo?
plays a
Perform?
mean liar.
Oh,
Yeah, Venti already fulfills that role.
Okay, we can have two. Venti might get too drunk.
Classic Albedo fan trying to make it about Albedo.
Amanda's like, the important thing is Albedo is a part of the event.
Yeah.
Of course.
He can do set design.
I mean, he could do set design, but they said in Windbloom that he plays a mean liar in the first Windbloom event.
I mean, it would be funny if he was doing the set design and then, like you said, Venti passes out drunk. He steps in
And saves the day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As he should.
it's like another version of like the end of the Farina quest where it's like, oh no, so and so is knocked out. We need Farina to do it. It's just a callback.
Yeah.
Albedo's like, I just came here to paint. Damn it.
Albedo has to sing like Venti.
Yeah, he's like, ha ha ha.
Where's my mom?
You just know that he can sing perfectly too. He probably has perfect pitch.
Oh yeah, I mean Koi has great pitch. So he sang a few songs online. He sang how to Frozen's Let It Go as Albedo. It was amazing. I reference that as often as I can.
Yes.
That way Tiff has to put it on the website as many times as possible.
Oh my God.
The only thing that I just wanted to bring up was one of the things I think is really interesting because Farina's story, her whole backstory is so ingrained with the story itself. If you go back with the hindsight and rewatch her character demo and her character teaser and even her collected miscellany, they tell us, like, there's hints in it, the whole thing. Like, they're not even hiding the fact that, yeah, like there's this duality, there's this kind of like fight that kind of goes on with her, but it also obviously, you know, her demo is very vaudeville and it's very theatrical, and you know, it has everybody in Fontaine like in a play basically.
It's so funny. It's
Yeah.
so good.
I love the fact that her demo is called All the World's a Stage. And then looking back on it, it's a double meaning. It's like, damn, the whole world really was her own stage for her own perspective.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Also, I might be biased again because I'm the number one Farina fan, but in my opinion, that's the best demo trailer that they've ever made because it's just so fun. It shows off her kit very well. The end goes crazy where it's like the French singer and like all the characters in Fontaine are just beating each other up. And like Child's there too, because why not? And then at the end, they all just stop and just pose.
Yeah, it's totally Broadway. It's all Broadway. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really funny. And that was another moment because that was released before the end of the Archon Quest, and I was already a Farina defender. But that was a moment where it's like, man, I might actually see Six's character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then even in like her inner teaser too, kind of gets a little bit darker, and it kind of shows that like it has a lot of the foreshadowing and stuff. But one of the interesting things in her miscellany, as we know, Dainsleif is the narrator of all of those, and it obviously goes through all the regular stuff. At the end, he's talking about how like actors watch themselves in a mirror to, you know, be able to learn their craft better and to make sure they're seeing what the audience is seeing. He says, "But I wonder who is it that she really sees looking back at her?" And you see her in the other outfit that she's in. So it's a neat little thing. Like I said, looking back at it, you know, at the time, like we knew that there was something, and we can kind of even say it was the, you know, her two sides of her elemental kind of stuff from Fontaine. But I really loved that. And she had one other story teaser that came out that is called La Vaguelette, which means the wave or the ripple. And it's basically how she becomes human from an Ocean. Well, it's kind of like from the Oceanid to human to Farina's to being Focalor's double and stuff like that. And it gives the impression that she was in love with somebody who didn't want her to take the job and was like, "What, are you sure? Like, you really sure you're gonna do this? And he's like distraught and like really sad and stuff. And she's just kind of like, I have to do it. And it could just be a play, but it could be just really true. And I made it really even sadder for her story.
I think what you're referring to is when Genshin, because Genshin loves to release all the cutscenes for all the story quests that they have. I think that's the cutscene that's the little Oceanid play when she takes over the role. I think that's her part in
For
it.
that story teaser part of it. Yeah, but it just, I don't know. I feel like it could have been her. I like thinking maybe it was her.
I don't know if she ever got a moment within those 500 years to even have any romance. Because again, I think the only thing she could ever focus on was like, holy shit, I need to do this or else everyone's dead.
Well, I kind of thought it was like from before she took that job.
Well, before she took the job, there was no Furina. We see that Furina was created and she's kind of confused on where she is. And then Focalors appears to her in the mirror and she's like, okay, this is the first day of your ascension to a god. We're going to pretend and like make this whole thing and we're like, you're going to be the god. And she manipulates Furina into taking the role because she says like, oh yeah, if you don't, everyone's going to die. Yada, yada, yada. We've been over this. But I don't really feel like there was, or at least the game implies that there was much for Furina's backstory before. I think it was just Focalors made the plan. She made Furina, instantly cursed her, and then gave her the whole lie of like, oh, if you don't do this, everyone's going to die. And then that's how it is.
Sometimes I wanted her to have some kind of like dreamy like backstory that I guess I was just reading more into than it was.
I always thought that too, Tiff. So don't worry. I thought too that Furina was like an Oceanid prior to and just kind of took on the powers that she needed to. I don't think they make it like clear. I think it could go either way depending on the frame of reference.
Yeah.
But that being said, I do think that we have to switch to Kirara Mail because Kirara is giving Melty some super dirty looks right now.
I didn't want to say anything about it, but I know at some point I swapped to the other side of the table because Kirara was getting a little too close, but
she gonna like scratch you.
Listen, Kirara, I will say this. I apologize. I didn't know you were going to be there when I climbed through. If you did, I would have at least tried to angle myself away, or I would have called for you out. But okay, she's not agreeing with me.
On the plus side, I feel like it's making her hate Feeny less.
Yeah, that's true. That is
thank
true.
you.
So
I
thank you,
this.
Melty.
That may have worked. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to be here for every episode, though, so I think that's...
Yeah, I mean, next week
remind
she'll
her.
go right back to hating her.
Anyway, thank you, Kirara, for the mail. So we do have some messages this week. Our first messages comes from Hikori, and they said, hey, just noticed something interesting, and I have a theory. If you look at the little stone path at the Genshin loading screen, it kind of looks like there are train track marks. After Moeka broke the fake sky, a shattered planet was revealed. And don't you think it kind of looks like Star Rail's loading screen? My conclusion is that the Astral Express have visited Teyvat. What do y'all think?
I think that last week I really loved Hikori and their OC and everything like that. And I don't like them right now because that they're bringing up, I don't want it. I don't want the connection. And I hate it. But it's a good observation.
We know someone up in Star Rail has been to Teyvat, or someone from Teyvat has been to Herta Space Station in Star Rail, because there is a wing glider in the space station in Star Rail.
Yep.
But at first, this theory, I was like, I don't know, because the Astral Express it tends to stay like in space. It doesn't like land on a planet. But in the new region of Star Rail, it's revealed that they have a car that can disconnect from the main train spaceship and like go down onto a planet.
And we know that like the express itself might not be going down to the planet, but the people can. Like
or just like one train car.
Is it like there. Fortnite, where it's like, all right, where are we dropping?
That's how it feels.
Take the bus driver.
That's actually, that's pretty much exactly how the current region goes.
Doesn't Celestia kind of feel like it could be like a train station? Like they stop there and then you like yeet yourself off from Celestia. Like,
yeah.
You know who I think it is?
Who?
Kevin.
You and fucking Kevin. Ever since B's night of explaining Honkai cutscenes,
Whoa,
I have
first
not
off-
understood your love of Kevin.
First off, I've been talking about Kevin for years.
There's just something about that guy.
Who's Kevin?
Oh, Kevin is the love of my life in Honkai Impact.
I see. I shouldn't have asked.
He's not a great guy, apparently.
He's a villain.
I've never played the game, if you can tell.
Tell Beto.
Whoa. Pause there. My thing with this character of Kevin is that like all the other characters are like, I'm Bronya and I'm Sela and I'm Kiana, and then he's like, I'm Kevin. And I was like, this is the character for me. And he was also the only guy I'd ever met in the game, because Brandon like always is showing me things from Honkai Impact, so I know a lot more than you would think I'd know because I haven't played
Mhm.
it. So I really like this character. And isn't it, don't people think that Phanon is that in the new region in Star Rail? Don't
Uh-huh.
people think that's Kevin?
Yes.
So I think he went to Teyvat. Also because I've never met a Kevin on Teyvat. What if they were that scarred by him that they're like, no more Kevins here. Band name.
Plot twist, Kevin is the third descender, and chunks of him are in the Gnosis. And we're
Oh,
collecting, the Saritsa's collecting Kevin.
Kevin is the goop.
I'd be here for that.
Your Kevin is the opposite of my Barbara story.
Yeah.
I originally disliked Barbara because I was like, how come everybody has all these names like Kaya and D-Luke and then Barbara? I was
and
like,
Jean.
"Brr."
Jean.
Well, I didn't know her at that point. So I just was hating on Barbara. And then we became BFFs and I love her. But I hated on Barbara at first.
I love like an old name that sounds newer. Like, isn't Jason an ancient name? And
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
just like really like there's like from eons and eons ago, there's like people named Jason. It's hilarious.
Mhm.
I also just wanted to say quickly on the Star Rail note too that we did learn in Penacony that the Astral Express has been around for quite a long time, and that there have been many a trailblazer. Trailblazers are those who live and work on the Astral Express. And we know that they can decide to jump off the Express and stay somewhere at any point too. So I definitely think it's possible. I love the idea that maybe a Trailblazer is the primordial one.
Mhm.
There's, if you really wanted to try to interlock the games, there's a lot of ways you could try and do it. But I think it's a great question, Hey Corey. And I hope that we'll find out more as both the games expand.
Yes, thank you.
Great observation.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Tribby, if you haven't watched Tribby's character teaser, it looks like she's playing on Celestia. So Tribby is another character in Star Rail, so maybe
Mhm.
we'll link that in there too. But anyway, thank you, Hikori. Our next message comes from Mia, and they said, is there a character you think / feel like they should have a different vision than they currently do? For example, I don't know why, but Child feels like he should be Pyro and not Hydro.
Yeah, I agree with that. The one that I could think of that came to mind pretty quickly for me was Charlotte, because I feel like she should be either Pyro or Hydro.
Why is that?
She's really sort of cheerful and she's kind of like in your face and like ambitious and like energetic, but she's also like really helpful and like a team player. So that's why I'm like, she could be Pyro or Hydro. I just don't get the Cryo because most Cryo characters are like deeply sad about something.
Oh yeah, maybe we don't know something. Maybe it's all the news that she has to read.
We got to do a Charlotte episode.
She's just deeply sad because she can never get that interview with Farina.
Yeah.
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 I don't have like my own like personal character that I think should be a different vision, but I do love this theory people have about like Shang Yun with his vision. Like a lot of people think that Shang Yun should have been Pyro based on like his ambitions and things like that. But there was a theory I saw online a while ago, and if I could find it, I will make sure to Tiff puts it on the website. But the creator was basically saying that because of Shang Yun's yang energy situation and the yang energy making him so much hotter than he already is, and it being canon that Pyro characters run warmer than other characters, that it's possible Shang Yun would have like overheated and died if he became a Pyro vision holder.
Right.
And I'm very curious, like, if your vision is chosen based on your ambition, who was like, hold up, maybe we should double think this one. Who in
Yeah,
the
maybe
heavens?
Celestia was like, no, he's already got too much heatiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, not the heatiness again. I hate it.
The only one I could come up with, because I don't know if I've ever really felt somebody was in the wrong vision, as much as I may have felt they were in the wrong weapon. But Rosaria was the only one I could really think of. And mainly, my main reason is because I really love Electro and I really love Rosaria. So it would have made more sense to me if she was Electro for that reason. But she is cold as ice. So it kind of also, it works.
Mm.
Like I kind of get it as well.
Yeah. I actually thought maybe Chaska, when I first got to know her, I was like, why isn't she cryo? Because, the cryos are like, they're all like a little closed off, sad, disconnected.
Mhm.
Well, all Animo users have dead friends, and then we find out.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. I was like, but then, I finished the Archon questline and I suddenly understood why she's Animo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes a whole lot. Venti was just kind of like saw the future for that one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
like,
sure her parents
you get a
count.
vision, and you get a dead friend, and you get a dead friend. I had one for this because I was thinking about it. The way I thought about it was each nation has a different element. And so far, the only nation that doesn't have a single character that is the same element as its own nation outside of its Archon is Natlan. And of course, Natlan is still ongoing, but I don't think we have a lot of characters left to be released for Natlan. Like maybe, like we have Aoife, but we already know that Aoife is Animo. Outside of Mavuika, who is the Pyro Archon, we don't have a single Pyro character in Natlan, which is the nation of Pyro and war and flames. So that feels kind of odd to me. So I wanted to change one of the characters in Natlan to Pyro. And the only one that I could really make a case for doing that is Eon-san, because we see it like back when Genshin first came out, Hoyoverse released the Travail trailer, which basically made like a roadmap for the game of like Leeway to Inazuma, Sumeru, Fontaine, Natlan, and then Snezhnaya, and then what lies beyond, possibly Conria, Dainsleif, who knows. But for each part of the roadmap of the trailer, they showed a character that would be from that region. So it's like Ayaka for Inazuma, Sino for Sumeru, Linny and Lynette for Fontaine. And then for Natlan, we had Eon-san. And it's like she stomped her foot into the ground and it created like a big like fire behind her. I always thought she was going to be like Pyro or whatever. But then like all these years later, we finally get to Natlan and she's just another Electro character, which there's nothing wrong with that. But when you see the lack of Pyro characters in Natlan besides Mavuika, it feels very weird. And I don't think that we're going to get many other characters from Natlan in these Natlan patches aside from Aoife, who we already know is Animo. So I think it would make more sense if Eon-san, since she's the first character we knew from Natlan all the way since the start, and yet she's not Pyro, it's kind of weird. I think it would make sense if we just made her Pyro, and she can keep her same moveset and everything, but instead of Electro running, it'd just be like Pyro running.
Yeah.
And we're not like lacking on Electro characters in Natlan because we have Ororon and his emo ass and all that stuff. And then we have more recently with Veresa, who you could also make the case, let's make her Pyro as well. But I feel like she kind of fits more in the Electro kind of status. Out of all the characters, I feel like Eon-san is the one that I would change from Electro to Pyro. Not because I think that she's in the wrong vision necessarily, but more so I just feel like there should be more Pyro representation in the nation of Pyro.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Definitely.
That's who I would choose.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I didn't even think about that until now, that there's no other Pyros in Natlan. That's surprising.
It is surprising. And it's funny because we still don't really know who's given the visions, right? But a part of me is like, Mavuika's like, no, none of you will be traumatized like me.
Well, Mavuika was also thrown into the flame for like up until very recently, I assume. So it's like maybe she just wasn't around to give Pyro visions in Natlan.
Yeah, but there's still the question of like who's actually giving them. I don't think Mavuika is having a decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like what Nahida was giving Dendro visions while she was like locked up the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think they're automatic. I think Nouvelette's story quests, I think, make it sound like the Archons sort of, they have the power of like a sort of a pool of authority over that element, but it doesn't indicate that they're in any way consciously aware of who gets a little piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely wouldn't make sense for A to give out electrovisions when she then decides, oh, no, actually, everyone's going to give their visions to me. You can't have it anymore. It's like, then why did you give them out in the
Yeah.
first place?
Oh, that was the puppet, though, which was technically the Fatui.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
behind that.
but the real A was still conscious of what the puppet was doing. And it
She
was like,
didn't
yeah,
care.
Fully, yeah.
She was just like, whatever, I'm trying to figure out eternity. You people figure out your own stuff.
like she didn't know about like the delusions and everything.
well, I thought she did. And then she was like, yeah, but it's like, it's not affecting my plan of eternity. It's not a big problem. I don't really care.
I think she had the ability to see what was going on via the puppet, but I don't know
That she
how
always
often
looked.
she
Yeah.
checked.
It's like, how often are you checking the dog cam? You know,
Right,
like
right.
how often are you
It's like-
checking on your puppy during the workday?
Just getting notifications like the Ring doorbell. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, Senor is dead.
But thank you, Mia, for your question. We really
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks, Mia.
That being said, that is all the time we have for today. Melty, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Melty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
thanks,
I guess I just
Melty.
gotta. I maybe I'll be able to sleep downstairs if
Well,
they let
we'll,
me.
we'll get you a room at the Goth Hotel. I heard they had an extra
Okay.
space that the one of the Fatui left. Just be careful.
I don't have much more on me since I had to leave in a hurry, and
Yeah,
now I'm gonna
yeah.
have to leave in a hurry in the morning too. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, don't worry, we got you.
I know you're tired. I'm pretty sure Kirara offered to carry you all the way over there.
She might carry you to the ocean.
That's okay, Kirara. I think gosh, I'm never gonna be on her good side after this.
But Melty, can you tell us a little bit about the residence and where travelers can find you guys?
Sure, I can do that. So I am on another Genshin Impact podcast called The Resonance, which is a weekly Genshin Impact podcast. I'm not the main host. The main host is Ran, and I am on there, and we are also joined by our lovely lore lady Emerald. And the three of us talk about all things that are currently going on in Genshin. We currently talk about like the ongoing topics, things that are going on inside the game, things that might be going on outside of the game. We just keep it current. We talk about story quests, events that go on, gameplay or story-wise or otherwise. We talk about the music we like. Sometimes we just have fun episodes where we do Genshin Impact Who's Who, or Genshin Impact like Abyss runs, like choose your characters. There's just other fun things like that. And we just have like a chill, fun time. We talk about lore sometimes, but definitely not to the extent of Tales of Tevat. So yeah, we're just pretty chill about it. We try to do episodes when we can, and we're just happy to be a part of the Genshin Impact community in any way that we can, just like Tales of Tevat. And
yeah.
with that being said, I'm honored that you guys let me speak for as long as I did. I was worried that I would fall through the window and y'all just kick me out, because then that would be for nothing. But
No. We would never do that to the #1 Farina fan.
Yeah, on Farina Day. Like, come on.
C6 Farina fan, I have her weapon at R2, not R5 yet. I'll get to it someday when she reruns again. Nope. I'll say it once again. I am not that guy.
I have Farina's weapon on Kaya.
Oh.
Do you have Farina?
No.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
I have Farina, and I've been playing with her recently. She's really fun.
She has a lot of fun.
But travelers, feel free to check out The Resonance. We will have all the links to their socials and everything in our episode description, also on our website, talesoftevat.com. If you liked this episode or you had any feedback you want to provide that will be vetted through Albedo first, you can feel free to email us at talesoftevatpod@gmail.com. Make sure that it's Chalkboy appropriate. You can also feel free to give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts to let travelers know that while we may not have the #1 Farina fan on the podcast every time, we do have some fun over here. So definitely feel free to give us a rating, and feel free to check out our Ko-fi shop where you can buy us a cup of coffee, Diet Pepsi, or a Diet Fanta. That was last week's recommendation. So check that out. We have some merch in there as well. Next week, we are going to be talking about Golden Slumber, Jet's storyline. We'll be returning to Sumeru for that one.
We love the desert.
Yes, I know. I feel like we're finally, this is like our 6th desert episode. I feel like it brings it near to completion.
Yeah.
gosh. Maybe you guys can join me because I already got to go that way anyways. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
stay an extra week and I can take you guys there.
You can join the caravan. Absolutely.
Only if Sino is taking us there. But
Oh, not those jokes.
until then, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next time.
Bye, divas, actors, and most importantly, nerds.
I didn't think you were gonna say nerds at first.
Yeah, I got
I was,
worried.
my heart started palpitating.
I had to do